What's up, everyone? Excuse me. How you guys doing out there? Special Saturday stream. Unexpected, maybe. Hopefully. Was bummed about not getting you guys a stream on Tuesday. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. But I was kind of bummed about that, so. Today's not going to be our normal strict streams where we're just breaking down very specific topics. We're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to hang back because it's Saturday. Might as well, right? It's not like we have anything better to do. Huh? Some of you might. Some of you might be doing the Easter thing, pre-Easter. Might have some of that going on a little later today myself. Let's wait for a few more of you to come in and then I'll get started.
And everyone I fuck is dead. Everyone I date. And everyone I fuck is dead. Everyone I date. And everyone I fuck is dead. Everyone I date. And everyone I fuck is dead.
All right, guys. No. It's just the intro that I do here as I'm getting stuff set to go. I will play a few songs though, but all right. It's weird. All right. Let's do this for real. What's up, guys? I'm Rob. This is the Punk Ots, as you know it. Normally, I'm going live on Tuesdays in the evening, and we have a lot of fun. We do some deep dives on a single topic. That was my plan this past Tuesday, but didn't quite get there. Reason being, if you're noticing in the chat, I was hanging out with the Punk Rock Dad, 31 TV, Shop 31, and we had a nice conversation about none other than Operation Ivy and Rancid. Now, because this is my fault, this is completely on my end. I was not able to bring the Punk Rock Dad into the stream correctly. I think I could have done it, but then his recording would have been messed up, and then the whole thing would have just been a complete mess. So I ended up not doing that. and we just recorded offline. That will be available to you on my channel and his channel probably early next week. There's going to be 2 different cuts you're going to see. A more unfiltered cut on his channel, which will look more like a podcast, whereas the one on my channel, it'll still be in podcast format basically, but with a lot more edits and maybe a little more focused on 1 or 2 singular topics. And then of course, a ton of information from those streams and those conversations to come out later. Today, though, being that we didn't get a stream in on Tuesday, I just wanted to have some fun, check some stuff out, look at some TikToks, just sort of kick back and hang. Got a couple of hours here on a Saturday, got some family stuff to do a little later on. So I thought, what better time than the present to go ahead and get this done. One thing I wanted to point out to you guys is a podcast, not just a podcast that I was involved in, but a podcast that I discovered over the last couple of days. And these seem like some pretty cool guys. Communicated a little bit with them, and hopefully we can collaborate with these guys in the future as well. But as you can see on the screen, it is the Punk Rock Elite podcast. Now, Punk Rock Elite, you got to think of one thing, right? Got to think about keeping Punk Rock Elite. Now, this isn't Fat Mike's Fat Mike. No. This is a podcast about Fat Mike and the great NoFX. These guys have a couple of episodes out already, but I would say this past week or so, they got in their first real legitimate episode as far as full length and what they're going to be doing. And it was a breakdown of Liberal Animation by NoFX. Obviously, that's their debut for NoFX, and I think this podcast is going to go in chronological order as far as album reviews. That's not the only thing they're going to be doing on this podcast, as far as I know, but that is, I think, like a common thread that you can definitely follow with them and go album by album, which is a fun thing to do. You know, sometime in the future, I would like to do something like that on this channel. Maybe for members and such. But I just wanted to play a little snippet from that podcast with just a funny line and just give you a little bit of a flavor of what it was, what kind of humor and what their style is. So they're from the UK. Definitely tons of passion about this stuff. Let's hear what they had to say. And this is a little funny line that I pulled out of it after listening to the episode this week.
A lot of what I criticize liberal animation for is also kind of the reason why I love it, because whilst they might be, it is almost the mindless music of a child in a way. That's why I enjoy it.
That's a remarkable review. The mindless music of a child. But you're absolutely right. There's a sort of a very appealing naivety. Not naivety. Disregard for outside influence. I think because Brett Gurewitz of Bad Religion produced the first handful of NoFX albums, maybe just the first 2. This one and S&M Airlines definitely. And on S&M Airlines, there's a lot of Bad Religion style harmonies, ahs and oohs and all the rest of it. And there isn't on this one. I don't know if he just thought, I don't think I can make them do this on this, or it didn't fit. But I think they did resist that sort of thing.
So like the mindless musings of a child. I thought that was like a funny way to describe liberal animation and maybe to describe all of NoFX. I liked pulling out that clip because I thought that was kind of a bit of a highlight of that show and what the flavor is, because these guys are huge fans, but they're not really above criticism from what I've checked out before. So definitely go ahead, check them out. Like I said, Punk Rock Elite, wherever you get your podcasts. I'll probably pull out a clip or 2 from them once every couple of weeks, whenever they sort of pop me and whatnot. I think it's very much a worthwhile listen to, for sure. All right. Let's watch some clips. Let's watch some videos. Let's hang out. You know what? Before we do that, let's check out some news. I lied. Sorry. I do that. What do we got going up on the old loudwire.com? There's some funny stuff on here. We'll just scan some headlines. Won't really read into anything. So not punk rock at all, but if you're looking here in the corner, they're showing a Motley Crue, a timeline of their storied career. If you run a rock or metal website right now, you got to be raking in the Motley Crue clicks like these last 2 weeks. Like, holy hell. Every piece of content on any one of these music sites has been nothing but Motley Crue news. Mick Mars is suing the band, and Nikki Sixx responds, and this other guy says the other guy is all washed up, and it's a lot of drama, man. I would say I wish they would resolve it, but that band kind of operates on that kind of drama. Kind of what keeps them going, you know. In a lot of ways, they benefit off that conflict with each other. Greta Van Fleet named their favorite song to play live. None of them, I hope. I can't stand Greta Van Fleet. I don't know. Death metal covers of Slayer songs. That's the other thing. If you're not doing Motley Crue content right now on a rock or metal website, you got to be doing Metallica content with 72 seasons coming out. And I don't discount that. And I would cover it too if I ran a site like that. It's just been a lot lately, and that's kind of what these sites seem to do. I will say, I am a fairly big Metallica fan. That is one of my interests outside of punk rock. And the first few songs, the singles that they put out there, I didn't get it. I haven't liked it. The last one, the title track, I thought was pretty good. 12 Stories Behind People on Iconic Covers. Yeah, we know those. There's also a new Linkin Park song that dropped the other day, if you're into that kind of thing. They keep dropping these songs from the Meteora era, that, of course, being 20 years ago. Yeah, nothing really crazy happening in the news, though. Let's check out some clips, though. Now we'll do it. So, I wanted to watch a video by a few videos by a few different creators, and then some stuff we found. We're not going to get to everything. Some of us I'll lop off, and we'll go ahead and cover on a later stream. But I do want to always kind of track these so we don't lose sight of it. Let's start out with some Rick Beato. For those of you who are on the internet regularly, if your algorithm feeds you music content, you no doubt have interacted with Rick Beato's content. The man is an absolute beast on YouTube. He's a former producer, so he knows what the hell he's talking about when it comes to music. And even though like he looks like a guy that you wouldn't think would be in the hip and the know, like he always likes to point out, music producers in general are guys like him. They're gray-haired dudes that are even a little past middle age. But those are the guys that are producing the hits. They're not on the cover of the albums, hell no, but they are the guys making the hits. And I enjoy his producer series. You know, he has the What Makes This Song Great series, and he's done some episodes that might be relevant to some of you guys. He's got a few Green Day episodes. He's got some Slayer and Megadeth episodes. He's got 2 Blink-182 episodes on there, and it really breaks down the songs from the perspective of a producer. And he goes into his Pro Tools and he pulls everything apart. Does some cool stuff. I also think, and this is a topic that's been in my mind a lot lately and has been in the air, he does some pretty good essay and editorials on the state of music, something I think a person in his position absolutely would know. He has some good insights, I think, as someone who's in the music business, and he's someone that has teenagers, of just why music doesn't resonate the same as it used to. And he has a few different reasons for that, and he seems to have a pretty good grasp on that. And that topic has come up a lot in the last couple of weeks. There's been so much talk, especially with all the announcements of these festivals. Like, how come these festivals are catering to a much older crowd? Like, these festivals are not getting younger. The bands are getting older, and to the extent that younger people are showing up to these festivals, they're showing up to see the Green Days. They're showing up to see the Weezers. They're going to that Old Man Metal Fest in California that was just announced with like Iron Maiden and Ozzy and Metallica and everyone. Good stuff. Definitely something I would like to check out if I had the means, or even myself. I'm going to the When We Were Young festival, which whole mission is explicitly to cater to people that are a little past their prime as far as a music consumer. So I wanted to break down one of his videos. He had one here, which actually, and I have not seen this. His premise is, why do we stop listening to our favorite artists? It's something that I am intrigued with. Again, I had that conversation a couple of days ago with the punk rock dad. We discussed a lot about our love of Rancid and Op Ivy, and that's one of those bands that, like, for me, kind of always stayed there, that you never really left. But there's so many bands that I love now that I loved before, that maybe I went for like a 10-year period and just fell out of them, or there's some bands I've never went back to. And I think it's a funny concept, because that's when you become old, right? When you stop ingesting new music, that there's a certain signifier there where you do seem to put a certain cap. And you can still listen to newer stuff, and I definitely try to listen to newer stuff as much as I can. But sometimes, man, I just I like the comfort food of what I like, even though I know sometimes the vegetables and the new stuff is where it's at, especially if you want to do something here on YouTube. You want to stay current. You want to know what's going on. Let's see what Rick has to say about this, though. And as he does that, it's a Saturday stream, so
do you have a favorite band that you loved 20, 30 years ago, and you
hold on, Rick. Let's grab ourselves a cold one. It's a Saturday. Some of you have a long weekend. Hope you do. Some of you guys have a short weekend, and that sucks. Gonna not be sponsored by any beer. You can figure out what this is. It's a mass marketed beer. Hardly supporting the local man, supporting big business here with my beer. But I do have my koozie from Punk and Drublick that I got last August, which is one of the few pieces of merch I actually got over there. So let's crack one open. Put a vegetable in your beer, because that's how you have to drink beer, with vegetables. Cheers to the weekend. Let's enjoy Rick's video. Let's hang out. Let's have a good time.
do you have a favorite band that you loved 20, 30 years ago, and you really, really were into the first few records? They put out new records now, or they may go years without putting out a record, or they'll continue to make records, and you just become less and less connected to them. And you always just go back to the first few records. We all do that.
Who is that one for you? For me, that's AFI is the one that I think of in my head. I still very much like AFI, and I actually like their new stuff. I do. I've checked it out. I don't listen to them anymore. I'll listen to Sing the Sorrow stuff if it's right in front of my face. And as I said a couple weeks ago, I think that's a very good album. But I just personally do not go back to anything past then. Really, anything past Art of Drowning. I totally venerate all the stuff before then. But that's a band with a direct cutoff. And I don't like the discourse of the selling out or what they did or the changes in musical style. I don't give a shit about any of that. That's just a band that I just don't go back to.
There's a name for that, but I haven't thought of it yet. But I'd love it if you guys would come up with a term that fits that. So I was thinking about this, giving bands a chance. Like, do you really give your old favorite bands a chance with their new music? So I thought, well, what's a band that I loved in the past that has new music out? Well, Depeche Mode has a new song out. Before we go on, if you're new to the channel or you've watched some videos and come back, remember to hit the subscribe button. Now, when I think of Depeche Mode...
What do you think of when you think of Depeche Mode? Depeche Mode's a good band. Not really in my line of sight. I think I've enjoyed The Silence, obviously, but I found that song through No Use for a Name. And then I heard the original version, which they're both amazing. But I first got my teeth into that from No Use for a Name. I think Warped 01 comp.
I think of songs like Never Let Me Down Again. This is off, this is from Music for the Masses. Beautiful. I'm thinking about doing a What Makes This Song Great on
I just never could completely vibe with all that electronic stuff. Just not my thing.
This song, because there's some really cool moves musically in it, and beautiful melody, great, really forward-thinking production.
Yeah, not my thing. I mean, if you're into it, that's cool.
Love that. Love this. Oh, beautiful melody move. It's just so uplifting, so powerful. Okay, so they have a new song out, and it's called Ghosts Again. Let's check it out and see if this is something. I'm going to see if I feel that this is something worth checking out here. We're going to check it out together. This is on the alternative charts now.
Which, by the way, anyone complaining about punk and metal taking up the charts now, I present to you Depeche Mode, still lighting up the charts. Let's put a little bit of speed on this.
Okay. Has a signature kind of 80s feel to it. Although the snare is really a little bit more modern, maybe. Wasted feelings, broken.
Sounds pretty good at 1 1/4 speed. Tell you what.
David Gahan. Wow.
I'm climbing it a little bit and listening to it at that enhanced speed, but I gotta tell you, it sounds pretty good. I like it better than the older Depeche Mode stuff. That might be blasphemy. Someone's gonna throw something at me.
That's like classic Depeche Mode. That's as good as anything. And it's a new song. It's 2023, just came out. There's a new record coming out. We just listened to a song from 1987 before that. And then 2023, how many years is that? My God. I can't even, what is it, 30? Is that 30?
That's how old I am. It's 36 years, Rick. Take it easy.
5 years, 36 years ago. And then you hear this new song and it's and one of the things, so you have a great melody, the production's excellent, which to me is not unexpected. That's a lot of the production things are taste and the way the songs are written. They have great taste. Okay, so but it's like, does David Gahan's voice sound powerful still? And it sounds excellent. His voice sounds as good as ever to me hearing this. So I've given this a chance and I will check out the new record after hearing this. So then I was thinking, okay, I've been playing this experiment every day in the morning when I drive my daughter to school. I think like, okay, can I give an old artist a chance? So then I went and I was listening to Tori Amos has a record that came out in 2021. And if you guys have watched my channel, I did a live stream on her Little Earthquakes record, which came out in 1992. I did that probably about 5-6 months ago or so. And I love that record. That's the one with Silent All These Years. You guys know this?
What's so amazing about really deep thoughts?
Beautiful record. Incredible production.
I think right now in punk rock, we have, so you've got the Bouncing Souls that just released some new music. That's some stuff to give a chance to. Our beloved NoFX released some music a couple of months ago, which I don't think Double Album has really connected. The songs aren't bad, and I've gone back and listened to them a few times, but I don't think it's just really resonated in the same way. And then there's bands that you're like completely disconnected from. So I seen earlier, and I've been listening throughout the week, the new record by Sam I Am. Now Sam I Am's pretty obscure, but that new record they have is amazing. It's just hard though to integrate those songs, I think, in like a band like that back into your life. Like again, there's some stuff that you just have never stopped listening to, and you probably never will. And that's a completely different story than the stuff that you completely go away from and then you're going to give it another chance. Because also, let's just face it, as artists get older, their output gets slower. So there's more time in between releases. So for what used to be one album to the next, maybe was a year and a half ago before, you're looking sometimes 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And bands, these days they don't even really release albums. So they release, singles. So when they do an album, it's a big labor. And I just don't feel like in our modern climate, there's always the payoff to it.
I mean, it's really one of the best produced records. Songwriting's phenomenal. Singing, amazing. And this particular song was a single. I love this. I love the upfront dry voice with the beautiful lush, and then
So like the Tori Amos fan is like the one that's
when it goes
coming at you from the 90s fandom.
I love that progression
they're
there.
just all
That C-sharp
aggressive
minor,
at
G
you
major,
for
B.
not enjoying
It's
their
just
stuff.
so inviting. The chorus of that's beautiful, and then the really weird piano lick that happens that with the half step at the beginning. I mean, right off the bat, when I first heard that, I was like, what is this? I mean, honestly, when I did my Tori Amos video, I heard her Smells Like Teen Spirit cover on the radio that's off a 5-song EP that you can't really find anymore, and it's phenomenal. And it has Smells Like Teen Spirit, it has Crucify. You guys know Crucify. That's also on this Little Earthquakes record. Amazing. So it has Crucify on it, solo. It has Thank You by Led Zeppelin, incredible version of that. It has Angie by the Stones. It's just a brilliant. I think these are all added to her deluxe edition of Little Earthquakes, but that was actually an EP that you could buy. But she has a record that came out in 2021. So I thought, okay, I'm going to listen to it. So I was listening to it in the car today, and I came across this song, Flowers Burn to Gold. Now, I looked at the titles to say, okay, I'm just going to pick a song out at random. And that title, Flowers Burn to Gold, what does that even sound like, right? So let's check it out.
Let's get this going a little quicker, Rick. You're not really making any points that I care about other than how much you like Tori Amos, which is cool. I got nothing against that. Okay, now it sounds really trippy.
I love the roll she just did in the piano there. She does these beautiful low piano voicings. It's just like in Depeche Mode, the production and just the choices of what instruments, the sounds that are put together, and even with just the piano part. So she's going, this B minor spread triad, and then she's like A major, but with a spread triad, and then G major there. This beautiful moody progression, 6-5-4. And then C major. Then, beautiful. It's just voice and piano. Love that. And this.
So I really like when Rick goes on his like rants and raves. I don't mean that in a mean way. And I like when he breaks down music from a producer standpoint. I'm just not caring about this video very much. I thought he was going to really explain his philosophy as he's done about like music and TikTok for, and how that affects kids and all that stuff.
Wow. Beautiful. Just the choices in there when it goes. Then he goes back to the. Love that. This song is beautiful. You told me. Records, but I just stopped listening to her. And now this came out in 2021. And Tori is not someone, I'll be honest with you, I'm a huge fan of the early records, but I just stopped listening to her. And we all go through this at a certain point with our favorite artists. Not all of us do. There are people that will follow an artist, and I have artists like that my friends are like, oh, you'll never think that they have a bad song, right? We all have that. Everybody has that. But Tori, I lost track of with her records.
Who's that band for you? Who's the band that you'll never think has or had a bad song? Like, and I don't think it's as objective as we would like to think about it. I don't think like we're just like, man, they never did anything bad or they never put out a bad record. there's just some bands that I think our fandoms from probably blind us to maybe the reality of their music sometimes, or the reality of the quality of their music, because we always want to accept the fact, or we don't want to accept the fact, I should say, that maybe they've slipped a little bit. Maybe they've gotten older. Maybe they don't have it anymore. Maybe we don't have it anymore. That's the other part about this as well. Our perceptions are different. I think that's why some people fall out of punk rock, to be honest with you, because it is music that is so very much explicitly set up and catered to the youth, which all music is. That's not just unique to punk rock. And I always want to make that point, that it's not just unique to punk rock for the youth. However, punk rock tends to lean on the adolescents, no pun intended, pretty heavily. So you can understand why people would want to get out of that or not necessarily be associated with that.
After the first, by the mid 90s or so, or late 90s. And I started listening to other stuff. So this is kind of something that I'm trying to do. Now I'm getting into this record. I was just, when I'm looking through the list of what should I listen to first, when I saw Flowers Burn to Gold, it's like, wow, that is a great title. And that right there is an invitation. It's kind of like a thumbnail or a title on a YouTube video that invites you in. Is this something I want to click on? Well, is this something I want to click on and listen? And the answer is yes, this is beautiful. So I'm going to go and listen to this. And I'm going to listen to the new Depeche Mode record when it comes out, and I'm really excited about it. That's all for now. Love to know your
So we will watch Rick's videos in the future. I may preview some of them, though, because I don't think that was the most constructive use of our time, for sure. Let's watch something else, though. Let's see what we got going on here. Let's check out. There we go. Let's do that. Let's see what our good old friend, the Punk Rock MBA, is up to. I say good friend. I've never met the guy. Shared some messages with him before, but don't claim to know him. But he's been putting up this series that I think he kind of aped from Mike the Snare. He kind of copied from Mike the Snare, where Mike the Snare goes in for like a whole decade of music and just breaks down each year. But Mike the Snares, I think, is a little more general, where Punk Rock MBA's, the McKendy, it's obviously more focused on, I would say, similar to what like we like to focus on this channel. More similar, more in that vein, more in line with what we like. So he's got a little 20-minute video that'll get us to the top of the next hour, and then we will talk a little Ataris.
And the grunge is spreading. This is the spring look for 1993.
What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA, and today we are here to talk about what I would consider the single most important decade in the entire history of alternative music, the 90s.
I think about the 90s.
I think that's about, I think that's right with the 90s, about being the, I don't know if it's the most significant decade in rock music. Actually, I'm almost positive that it's not. The 70s are super important. The 50s are super important. It is, however, the last actually important decade, I would say. And again, now Finn's definition of alternative, we'll see what that is, because that can be super, super broad. Which Dropkick Murphys did he buy? The new one, or something from back in the day? Yeah, I'm not a fan of liberal animation. It's for sure not my fave. For sure.
But first, let's talk about the 80s. Ah, yes, the 80s. The decade of big hair, Miami Vice, power suits, sax solos, and of course, epic montages of people training around the clock to make their dreams come true. The 80s were very arguably the corniest decade in mainstream pop culture, but at the same time, the
2000s are not very far behind. I just got to say, the 2000s are cordy as hell too. They're the 2000s are the reset of the 80s, right? They're shiny. Everything's got this like positive party vibe to it. I think the 2010s and the 90s have a weird kinship. Everything's gray, everything's drab, everything's boring.
Alternative music scene was quickly growing. There were college rock bands like the B-52s and REM, goth and post-punk like Sisters of Mercy and the Smiths, and whatever genre you want to call bands like Sonic Youth, Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Pixies, and all the other bands breaking new ground in the 80s. But
what do you call that genre of music that he's talking about with like the Pixies and Sonic Youth? I would say that's what I think of when I think of alternative. That's probably like the truest definition of alternative to me in that way. Alternative as a genre, I think like all punk rock and all theoretically non-mainstream music can be considered alternative, but then you're getting into the semantic situation of like pop punk as popular punk versus pop punk as a genre. But definitely Chili Peppers, Pixies, Sonic Youth. Yeah, I'm thinking of them as alternative. They are bands that internalize, listen to punk, but what they reproduced out was just a little bit different. It had a little bit different style to it.
the 90s are when it all really came together, and for better or worse, the underground became the mainstream. Nirvana opened the door for everybody, leading the way for all the bands that basically created the foundation for almost all of the alternative music of today. The Beastie Boys and alternative rap, Korn and nu metal, Nine Inch Nails and industrial, Oasis and Britpop, as well as some other stuff that, let's just say, did not age quite so well, such as the short-lived swing revival. So we are going to talk about all of that and more.
Remember that swing revival? Brian Setzer? Yeah, Brian Setzer Orchestra, right? That was weird. And I think it was like intended to be a takeoff of ska, but the whole thing was just strange.
And there was a lot to get into here, so this is going to be a long one, but I will do my very best to break it all down. So grab some popcorn and get comfortable.
All right, let's do it. Have a drink
also,
and get comfortable.
I'm going to give a shout out to Mike the Snare, who gave me permission to borrow his video format for this one from his video about mainstream music that defined the 90s. He makes absolutely incredible videos, so make sure you check his channel out. And really quick, before we go any further, have you checked out my Patreon? Patrons get early access to all my main channel videos and my podcasts. I also do giveaways sometimes.
I have not
been. I
have
just
not.
gave away a pair of these Eargasm earplugs. And if you want me to review your music, there's a way to do that as well. All you got to do is join at the $10 and up level. Then every month I do a call for submissions. If you want me to.
On that note, I'm about 3 days away from getting memberships going on this channel. And the initial tier, the basically 99-cent tier, will include the ability for me to review your music. Now, you're going to have to prove to me that you are the copyright holder. So I keep the fuzz off of me as far as that goes. But I will absolutely, I'll turn my mic down a little bit. I will absolutely review your music and make it as a public video and push that out there once you sign up for that tier. Stay tuned next week, though, for more on that.
To review something, all you got to do is drop it in the comments of that post. Then I will review it live on Twitch and post it on Patreon for everyone to see. So if that sounds cool, hit the link in the description of this video, and I appreciate your support. So with that out of the way, the first selection from 1990 is Been Caught Stealing by James.
Here's the thing about that, 31. I agree, because I agree that Van Fleet is it the basketball player? Fred Van Fleet. I agree with that. It's rough though, because I don't love Led Zeppelin either. Like, I think Led Zeppelin's good. I respect Led Zeppelin. I'll listen to Led Zeppelin on occasion, but I also don't like Led Zeppelin. So whenever there's this thing that's like this tribute to this thing I already kind of don't care for, I really didn't care for.
Jane's Addiction. And I'm picking this one for a few reasons. First of all, because if I had to pick one band that was really responsible for putting alternative music on the map, aside from grunge, it would be Jane's Addiction. They combined punk, metal, funk, and a lot of just really eclectic influences from genres like klezmer and prog rock in a way that felt like a real evolution of the college rock thing that 80s bands like REM were doing. To me, it feels like the first example of like truly 90s alternative music, something that just couldn't have come out in, say, 1985. It was very innovative and original, but they still had these super catchy, accessible songs that got them a lot of mainstream recognition. For example, this video won.
The thing with Jane's Addiction is, like, they're a band that I would hear on the radio back, especially when we would have alternative radio around here. And I always liked their songs. I did. I never felt it. And again, I came at this like a decade literally after 1990 is when I personally am getting into music. And they were never a band that I ever had the urge to listen to anything past a video drop on a cable channel or their song on the radio. It did not move me at all. Jane's Addiction never really did.
Best alternative music video at that year's MTV Video Awards. But maybe even more importantly than the band itself, Jane's Addiction frontman Perry Farrell also started Lollapalooza, which, as far as I'm aware, was the very first traveling alternative music festival. The first lineup, which I went to back in 1991, was Jane's Addiction, Rollins Band, Nine Inch Nails, Susie and the Banshees, Fishbone, Ice.
Okay, let's break that down really, really quick. Oh, that's unfortunate, 31. I do like Meteora. I was like 14 when it came out. I didn't stick with that type of music, but I definitely have some angst tied to that album. Maybe on my second channel I'll do some Meteora content. But check out this lineup. So the Rollins Band, Butthole Surfers, Ice-T, Nine Inch Nails, Living Colour, Susie Sue and the Banshees, Jane's Addiction. Now compare that to the 96 lineup. Now 96 is the lineup I felt like was made for me because you had Metallica headlining with Rancid and the Ramones on the undercard there. That was made for me for sure. But there's all that controversy that it was too metal and too bro-tastic. Look at so that means it was getting away from the initial like conception of what Lollapalooza was supposed to be as this, quasi hippy dippy alternative festival. But look at the initial lineup. This isn't exactly the most non-threatening of lineups, let's just say. Jane's Addiction, Susie Sue and the Banshees, Living Colour, Nine Inch Nails, Ice-T, Butthole Surfers, Rollins Band. Those are in-your-face bands. I don't know how the whole discourse grew on Lollapalooza. And culminated there in 96, which is funny because the versions of the tour now, and obviously, it's kind of tricky how they're connected. The ones in South America tend to still have those kind of bands. And then the ones that we're getting here is one of those festivals that rock music doesn't get blamed for keeping young artists down. It's just the music establishment as a whole gets blamed for keeping young artists down. And then rock fans complain that there's just not enough rock on those. But guys, there's enough festivals. There's plenty. Look, I went to one right there. I'm going to go to a few more this year. You don't need to go to Lollapalooza. Like, it's okay. I understand maybe it was once your thing. It's fine if it's not now.
Ice-T, Violent Femmes, just a who's who of alternative music in 1991, and honestly, a lineup that would still be pretty great if they did this tour today.
It features Jane's Addiction, along with such opening acts as Living Colour,
Kurt Loder,
Susie and the Banshees, and the Butthole Surfers.
Lollapalooza was a very big deal, taking alternative music on the road and playing to over 500,000 people that year, and because of its success, Lollapalooza itself was the template for really pretty much every other traveling festival since then, for example, Lilith Fair, Ozfest, Mayhem, and of course, Warped Tour. But when it comes to...
And we should note, Kevin Lyman worked on Lollapalooza before founding Warped Tour.
Jane's Addiction, obviously, the single most important thing they gave to us was launching the career of Dave Navarro, which means that Jane's Addiction indirectly gave us Ink Master, the gift that keeps on giving.
I want to watch your technique. You're going
Good show. Don't be hating, Finn.
Which brings us to 1991. And this is an incredibly difficult year to tackle because there is just so much to choose from. This is the year when bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Smashing Pumpkins, Primus, Pearl Jam, My Bloody Valentine, and tons of other iconic bands had their breakthrough successes, which was amazing enough. But it's also the year that the Lord chose to bless us with Super Mario World, which to this day is a 10 out of 10 in my book.
Introducing the next generation from Nintendo, New Super Mario World, created especially for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
But with all of that being said, if we're talking about 1991 in the context of alternative music, the choice is obvious. It Smells Like Teen Spirit.
But there's a few other albums that came out on the metal side in 91 as well that I don't think quite... I said this too many times. The reputation of Teen Spirit as the only album that broke in the early 90s I think is real ridiculous because you also had, again, a lot of the thrash bands that they were releasing stuff in 91 to 92, I should say more specifically. But those bands that have survived the 80s were now really, really going strong in 91 and 92. Yes, Teen Spirit is the choice for a video like this, as he is doing, but it's not the only one. So I got he addressed that a little bit, but I think I think when you're not doing a zero-sum game, the spectrum on 91 needs to be expanded out.
Spirit by Nirvana. And I don't really have much to add here to what I've said before about Nirvana or everything that's been written about them over the years, other than to say this. Nirvana really truly did change the world pretty much overnight.
Grunge is the fashion trend launched by the hard-driving guitar music known as the Seattle Sound. The grunge look is an urban lumberjack.
And yeah, they were super influential. Like, I think sometimes in my other comments it sounds dismissive. Because think about how much like mainstream rock that wasn't necessarily punk or metal really sucked in the late 90s, and he'll probably get into it there. Like, that's where we're talking about the post-grunge bands. All the bands that sounded like this. And some of that music's good, but it's all that post-grunge haze, which I'll be honest, I don't think rock music ever really recovered from.
Anything Goes ensemble of duck boots, tattered shirts, and long underwear.
So I'm going to move on here because there's other things that I want to focus on that haven't been talked about so much. But to make a long story short, Nirvana's impact simply cannot be overstated, and to this day, we're still living in their shadow. Which brings us to 1992, and my choice for this year is So What You Want by the Beastie Boys off of their album Check Your Head. And for those of you who may not be familiar with their career, they started out as a hardcore punk band back in 1980 before switching to rap. And then with this album, they kind of brought some of those...
Another band too. Like, I'm not the biggest Beastie Boys fan, but super ahead of their time, I would say. Definitely the way they thought of a different way to do hip hop, and the way so many people liked them too, from both sides of the hip hop and the rock side. Like when I started hearing Beastie Boys on like the radio in the 90s, I had no conception that this was ever any type of rock band. Now they fit in though in that era because that's the era where the rap metal was really going. So having hip hop songs like on a rock station didn't seem like it was so far-fetched.
Punk influences back and kind of brought it all together and essentially created the genre of alternative rap, which may not seem super groundbreaking these days when it's far from unusual for a rapper to be into punk and have colored hair and stuff. But back in 1992, the idea of combining punk, rap, skateboarding, and the emerging idea of streetwear into one thing was just totally unheard of, completely out of left field. I did a whole video about the Beastie Boys if you want to know more, but I mean, even just look at the video for this song. You could put this video out today, unedited, and it would seem 100% current. That is how ahead of the curve these guys were. The Beastie Boys walked so that Lil Peep, Playboi Carti, Supreme, and Turnstile could run. Full stop. I think in hindsight, Ill Communication from 1994 might be their best album, but to me, this one is the one that really stands out as the one where they really put their...
But what's the one that's playing when Steven Seagal is in that movie? Right? That's when we got No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Cool.
Creative thumbprint on the scene, and it's really just like the perfect snapshot of what alternative culture was in 1992. And moving on to 1993, we have Thunder Kiss 65 by White Zombie.
To really do like a reaction review like this justice, I would need like the top songs from each one of these years up. Obviously, I'll have something to say in 94, and I'm curious which way he goes.
And I chose this one because it shows the changing nature of the media landscape, in particular MTV. MTV started in 1981, and by the mid-80s, it had evolved into the most important hitmaker, tastemaker destination for music, and really for like youth culture in general. If your video got into MTV's rotation, you were on the fast track to becoming a star. For example,
now TikTok is just flexing its muscle on MTV like that. Like, we are what you used to be.
A lot of the biggest names that we think of from the 80s, like Michael Jackson, Madonna, and Van Halen, all got heavy airplay from MTV in the 80s. And a big part of what turned them into truly iconic household names was being played literally 10 or 20 times a day on MTV.
Probably watch some footage from 120 Minutes on that note here in a little bit.
TV for tens of millions of people all over the country in a time where we didn't have TikTok and Spotify and all the other ways to discover music. But by the 90s, MTV's formula had evolved. Instead of just playing music videos around the clock like a radio station would, they started making a lot of original content like their animation show Liquid Television, and maybe most notably, the very first reality TV show, The Real World. And one of the most successful original...
Thanks for that, MTV. That was a real positive contribution to society.
Shows that they created was Beavis and Butthead. If you're watching this, I'm guessing you're familiar, but just in case you aren't, essentially the show was these two stoner kids from the middle.
The first ever reaction streamers, Beavis and Butthead. Fumbled over my words there.
of nowhere who would go around town doing random dumb shit like working a shift at a fast food restaurant, and then in between that they would sit down and make fun of music videos. The show became insanely popular within the first year and kind of surprisingly became one of the most important platforms for breaking new artists, especially in the world of rock and metal. And White Zombie was probably the single biggest example of the show's power.
The key moment was Beavis and Butthead.
And aside from that, White Zombie themselves were just extremely 90s. Dreadlocks.
So are any of you guys on this plane that I am, where yeah, if I hear one of Rob Zombie's songs, I think that's cool, just because it reminds me of a much different time. But I'm not necessarily into it. But I hear White Zombie, and I'm all in. I'm cranking that up when White Zombie comes on. Rob Zombie, not so much. I like horror movies, but I'm not obsessed with them, so I don't really interact with Rob Zombie there. However, I will say, I talked about it a couple weeks ago about the revival of the Ramones in the early 2000s. Got to give Rob Zombie credit somewhat for that. Like his friendship with Johnny and just his involvement in all those projects really helped the Ramones, I think, be established to their legendary status that they are now. Obviously, they would have got there either way, but I think Rob Zombie had a huge hand in it happening at that very specific time and place.
Weird hats, the goggles, stripy shirts. The only way this video could get more 90s would be a guest appearance by Sonic the Hedgehog. Which brings us to 1994. Another year that's so full of important moments that it's really hard to choose just one. There's Korn's debut album.
So yeah, 94 is the biggest year in rock history. Right? Or at least post 1980 for sure.
Bush and the birth of post-grunge, Green Day's Dookie hitting #2 on Billboard, and making them the first real punk band from the underground DIY scene to see that kind of success. And so it's really hard to pick just one piece of music for this year, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and go with the entire event that was Woodstock 94.
The nice hedge there by Finn. Credit. Because I think if you're going 94 and you're just doing music as a whole, not punk specifically, you got to go Green Day. But there's a ton of other stuff. Like, and I'm curious what he gets into. Like, do your research. Like, just type in Google rock albums 1994, alternative albums 1994, punk albums 1994. It's huge. And obviously, we know the score in punk. We know Dookie, Smash, Let's Go, Punk and Drublic, the Pennywise debut. There's a ton of other ones. But like mainstream alternative too, it blows up huge. And that's always funny to me because that's the year that grunge died. Supposedly this whole narrative that grunge was the only thing that happened in the 90s, and that's where alternative and punk and metal and all that had their big glow from in the 90s. And it's like, yeah, it got them to the dance for sure, but they needed something else. Like that was only the early part of the decade. Grunge didn't have that sustained presence as grunge, as I mentioned earlier, post grunge did. And again, the punk rock took over in 94. That's why 94 is my favorite year of music by far. If I were to rank, or if I was ever like stuck in a chamber and I could only have 1 year's worth of music that came out in one specific year, it is without a doubt, it would be 94.
Here come those darn hippies again.
The original Woodstock Festival in 1969 was billed as 3 days of peace, love, and music, held at a decommissioned airbase in upstate New York, and it was viewed by a lot of people as really the defining moment of the hippie generation, with a lineup of absolutely legendary artists like Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and The Who, among dozens of others. Woodstock 94 celebrated the 25th anniversary of the original festival, and in the same way as Woodstock 69 was sort of the defining moment of that era, I would say that Woodstock 94 was probably the defining moment of the 90s alternative scene. The Woodstock 94 featured a lot of legacy artists.
The defining moment? I think that's a tougher conversation to have. I'd have to look at the entire lineup because we only think of that lineup as Green Day. We think of the Mud and the near riot that broke out, and Green Day was doing that a lot in 94. Green Day started a lot of little mini riots. It's funny to think about because we think of Green Day as so tame, especially in the context of a punk band. We think of them as kind of this immature, skinny kids just doing their thing, but it was still punk rock, and it was still causing problems when it interacted with mainstream society.
And safer acts like Joe Cocker, Melissa Etheridge, and Blues Traveler, but the real highlights were the next generation of 90s bands that they booked, including Primus, Rollins Band, and Red Hot Chili Peppers. All of the Woodstock festivals after the original one seemed to be kind of doomed to disaster. Maybe Janis Joplin put a curse on them or something.
By the way, the initial one's a disaster too. Don't let the propaganda fail you there. The initial one was also a disaster.
something, I don't know. And this one was no exception. It rained really hard that weekend and turned pretty much the entire venue into just a giant mud pit.
Did you get dragged in the mud? No, I walked in. You did this intentionally? Yeah, I followed mud people in here.
But unlike the chill hippies of Woodstock 69, this was the 90s, so things got edgy, with the crowd throwing giant globs of mud at the bands on stage, which was kind of funny at first, but you could tell that it quickly got very, very irritating for the bands. The whole thing was shown on pay-per-view to hundreds of thousands of people, with clips shown on MTV and even like the mainstream TV news. So the whole nation, and probably a lot of the world, was able to see this in a way that they never saw the original Woodstock. And the two moments that really stick out to me are, first of all, Nine Inch Nails, who played a live version of Closer that was just absolutely perfect, and really cemented them as one of the bands to pay attention to in this generation.
It's not my vibe. I could never imagine wanting to see Nine Inch Nails live. They're a good band. For sure. Trent Reznor's super talented in many ways. Many ways. But it's just not something I would have an urge to go see Nine Inch Nails. To me, they almost exist better like digitally or within your stereo than right in front of your face.
And most notably, Green Day's set, which turned into basically a giant mud fight with the audience.
These idiots, just like you guys. Okay, we're done. Goodbye.
And eventually, Green Day's bassist Mike Dirnt was tackled by a security guard by mistake, which knocked out one of his front teeth. That mud fight ended up being a big highlight of the media coverage around Woodstock, and with millions and millions of eyeballs on this thing, that moment is what really put them on the map, with Dookie hitting #2 on Billboard later that year, and turning Green Day into, well, Green Day. Which brings us to 1995. And my first...
Out Come the Wolves? Out Come the Wolves? It's not going to be Out Come the Wolves. It's not going to be Time Bomb, but one could dream.
First thought for this year was to mention Oasis and the brief Britpop trend.
Anyway, here's Wonderwall.
But I thought about...
There's another popular genre of music that I just can't vibe with, is the whole Britpop thing. Not my scene, not my thing.
About it a bit more, and as much as Britpop is quintessentially 90s, there's something that represents the pure, undistilled essence of the 90s even more, and that is the movie Clueless.
I don't know why Dion's going out with a high school boy. They're like dogs. You have to clean them and feed them, and they're just like these nervous creatures that jump and slobber all over you.
I remember seeing it when I was a junior in high school, mostly just because I liked Alicia Silverstone. I mean, who didn't? And at the time, nobody really thought that it would be anything other than just another disposable teen movie. But since then, it's become legendary, with a whole new wave of people discovering it after Iggy Azalea referenced it in the video for Fancy in 2014. It unexpectedly became a hit, and aside from launching the career of Brittany Murphy, rest in peace, it also broke a little band called the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones when it featured their song Where'd You Go in the movie's big dance scene, which was a big deal because, as you know, the prom dance scene is the climax of every teen movie. It also helped jumpstart No Doubt's career by using their song Just a Girl in one of the scenes in the background and including it on the soundtrack a year before they blew up. And so between those two songs, I think this movie...
I think too, and the point he'll probably get to, is that the first version of this type of movie. I think as they got a little raunchier as the 90s went on and into the early 2000s, definitely pop punk became very synonymous with those soundtracks. Like that was kind of, it was either that or it was the skateboarding video games is where a lot of people got a flavor of a lot of that music who wouldn't normally get a hold of it. But I think you can make an argument for Clueless as being the thing that really birthed that. That wasn't just like an indie film, because that had gone on. There's indie films in the mid 90s that have some pretty interesting stuff on them. There's even one that like what's it called? The one that Joe Escalante actually he produced or he like made the score for. Should probably look that up.
Movie and its soundtrack played a pivotal role in jumpstarting the third wave ska punk trend, and it just does not get more 90s than Save Ferris and Real Big Fish. Which brings us to 1996, solidly into the mid 90s, and the year that I graduated high school. And my pick for this year is The Beautiful People by Marilyn Manson from his album Antichrist.
Not a bad pick. Probably the best Manson song, I gotta say.
Superstar. He first got onto the map with his cover of Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics, but this song proved that he could do more than just a twisted 90s cover of an 80s song. And my personal opinion about Manson is that he seems like kind of a creep, but putting aside the many allegations...
You don't say. You don't say.
against him. On a purely artistic level, you really have to give Manson credit for basically creating the template for the entire branch of industrial metal that has followed after him, both sonically and aesthetically. For example, not to take anything away from either one of them, because I think both of them are great, but if you look at Motionless in White and what Ghostman is doing these days, both of them are essentially an updated version of Antichrist Superstar. And he also kicked off a whole new wave of the Satanic Panic. The first wave of the Satanic Panic was back in the 80s.
Yeah, this is something I want to do a real deep dive on for the second channel one of these days. The late 90s version of the Satanic Panic, because there's so much real estate given to the 80s version, and I don't think nearly enough to the 90s version. And probably it's a little less interesting, but it ties into a lot of different threads that I like to explore with late 90s pop culture. And it's probably interesting to me because, you know, personally I was the teenager, I was the adolescent that people were worried about, you know, being infected by these things. So I can see why that has such a personal resonance with me. I definitely want to deep dive on that topic though.
When Christian fundamentalists blamed Iron Maiden and Judas Priest for teenagers unaliving themselves and playing D&D.
Since kicking off his Dead to the World tour in October of '96, Manson has met opposition at almost every stop along the way.
If they're going to have an atmosphere here that praises Satan, we're going to lift Jesus higher.
And I would have thought that by 1996, after movies like Natural Born Killers and games like Mortal Kombat, where you pressed buttons to rip someone's spine out, I would have thought at that point we would have all gotten kind of numb to this kind of like edgy shock imagery.
But the video game stuff was a part of that in that era though too. Like, you know, if you fast forward a couple of years to the Columbine massacre, it's video games and it's goth rock.
But Marilyn Manson was just so damn good at it that the fundamentalists took his bait and helped turn him into exactly what he claimed to be, which was the Antichrist Superstar. Because think about it, if you're a teenager, what could possibly make you want to listen to an album more than your parents telling you that you are not allowed to? Which brings us to
That worked for me with him very, very specifically.
1997, which I consider to be kind of a pivotal year in alternative music, even though you don't hear people talk about it very often. And what I mean is that up until this point, when you said alternative music, it really implied a rock band, meaning bass, drums, guitars, and a front person / singer. But as the underground electronic music scene started to flourish in the late 80s and early 90s, that definition made less and less sense, especially in the UK, where the rave scene and then a few years later, the jungle and drum and bass scene were attracting a lot of the creative energy and young fans who would have been into alternative rock a few years earlier.
We're telling you about gigantic outdoor raves happening across the region almost every weekend. Sometimes they ended in confrontations with the police after residents complained of deafening music in the small hours of the morning.
Which brings me to my choice for 1997, Firestarter by The Prodigy.
It's a really good choice and really good to highlight how that injected itself into popular music. I also think of like Rammstein in this era. Using those electronics, using that industrial sound. He talked about it earlier with like Ministry and Manson and all that, but it's all part of the same thread. And remember, even in the early 2000s, you had these metal bands that were extremely electronic. They're Static X, I think, would qualify as that. I mean, a band that's kind of still around, even though they're using the Mascot lead singer. But it was almost like this disco and techno infused heavy metal, and you would see it you would see it everywhere. It was extremely prevalent.
This song was America's introduction to the genre known as big beat, which was built on, well, big, aggressive breakbeats that had the energy of rock. It was a subgenre of electronic music, but it didn't feel like nerdy techno or house music that would be played at some club for normies.
I remember even over here on our local like alternative station, the place where you would hear a lot of this music on the radio back then, they would have like a techno night on like Sunday night. There was like a local night. Maybe it was Saturday. Maybe Saturday was the techno night or the house night, and Sunday would be the local music night. And that was a big deal. And those shows would get promoted on there. Yeah, 31. I seen your video on that, and I do kind of dig the song. I really do.
wanted to party. And out of all that, The Prodigy really stood out, largely because their frontman Keith Flint, who had this really unique look and was just an insanely charismatic guy, who sadly passed away in 2019. Rest in peace to Keith. And aside from them, I really think of 1997 as the year that alternative and electronic music really came together.
There's also, though, and I'm sure he'll get to it, you got to factor in nu metal too, though. Like, those are threads, again, and nu metal, going back to 94, with that Korn release and Sepultura and all that, like nu metal was already humming at that point. But I look at, and I don't know if it's 96 or 97, but right around that point is when it really kind of, I think, spread beyond just like the bigger bands, and lower level bands were incorporating that style, incorporating the aesthetic, which I think very much borrowed from a lot of the hip hop influences, but also the down-tuned guitars and the hip-hop beats and all that good stuff. And I do think, though, there are two distinct genres, and I'm curious if he's going to talk about that, because there's a difference between rap metal and nu metal. They both can be the same, but they're not inherently the same thing.
As a few other examples, Filter and Crystal Method did a song. Korn did a song with Dust Brothers. The band Garbage mixed alternative rock with some electronic elements. And although Big Beat as a subgenre was pretty short-lived and it pretty much died out by the early 2000s, that marriage of rock and electronic music has only grown stronger since then, with artists now like Sullivan King and Keizo who are basically equal parts of both. And with that, we are getting close to the end of the 90s, in the year of our Lord, 1998. And if you recall, at the beginning of the video, I said that the pieces of music that I chose weren't necessarily the best on a purely musical basis. Well, this would be a great example. Zoot Suit Riot by Cherry Poppin' Daddies.
No. At least he's admitting that it's not the best, but good God, that stuff was awful. Zoot Suit Riot.
First of all, this band has one of the absolute worst names of all time, and the song is, well, awful. But I'm choosing it because it kicked off the short-lived swing revival fad, where for about a year and a half, people in their 20s...
Which I think is connected to ska, by the way. Like, I think you could blame third wave ska a little bit on this taking off, because people started to get used to the idea of like brass and horn and non-conventional, traditional instruments in rock music. The songs were huge, too.
20s were dancing like it was 1944 and taking swing dance lessons. It's true, the 90s were basically one big fever dream. It probably peaked the following year when Brian Setzer Orchestra's cover of Jump, Jive, and Wail blew up, and even The Gap got in on the swing revival.
Yeah. Whew. Rough times.
Action. And there's not a lot to say about the swing revival itself because, like I said, it came and went in maybe a little bit more than a year. But I'm bringing it up because it was such a great example of how the 90s were really just this wild, lawless time for music. Like, to give you an example of how insane the 90s were, this is the decade where Primus, of all bands, had not one, but 2 albums in the Billboard Top 10. It really felt like the last...
God, Primus is so weird. Primus is so freaking weird.
...time that just about anything could get popular, no matter how weird it was.
Well, it's the end of the monoculture, as people like to say. It's the last time everyone was all in on the same thing. Like, there's still been music, there's been rock music that's been very successful in the ensuing 2+ decades. But that stuff can be successful without, like, your neighbor or your cool hang at work also knowing about it. Like, everything's so siloed now that even if something's successful, it doesn't have this mass appeal the way everyone knew those 2 crappy swing songs back then. Everybody. Didn't matter who you were. Everybody knew those 2 freaking songs. People still know those songs. If you play those at a party, someone's gonna be there. Zoot Suit Riot. It's gonna happen.
I think this YouTube comment sums it up perfectly. As you tell your kids and grandkids, yes, there was a time that hip-hop, grunge, and swing music coexisted in pop music.
But it all blended after that, though. That's the thing about that. The ensuing decades, I've talked about this a lot, they've been the blurring of the lines of the genres in a different way that isn't as novel as the way fusing rap and metal were. I actually think music has been homogenized a little bit in that way without there being such respect and reverence to the genre.
We're not sure what the hell was going on. Which brings us to 1999, the end of the decade, and a song that really kind of marked the end of.
All right, the one song that I absolutely can play front to back on bass, just pick it up and do do do. Got to be the most polarizing song that's got the word punk tag to it, doesn't it? Even like within the Blink-182 catalog, which I'm a big Blink guy. I'll admit that. Everyone on this channel might not be, but I definitely mess with Blink every now and then, for sure. And they were a part of getting me into the genre as a whole. So I got nothing negative to say about them. However, this song can just rub you the wrong way, and I think it gives the wrong impression at times of the band and the genre.
The era of Weird is Cool, All the Small Things by Blink-182.
All the small things, true care, truth brings.
And to be clear, I absolutely love Blink, and this is one of my favorite albums of all time to this day. But
that'd be an interesting ranking of doing Blink albums in that time, because I think Enema is an objectively good album for sure, and kind of a peak of their recording and production and arrangements. But at the top of my head, I'll take the albums that wrapped around them, Take Off Your Pants and Dude Ranch, over Enema, just as far as the songs go. The songs and the arranging, for sure. Enema's a bigger album, but it is what it is.
My point here is that the entire reason that Blink became popular is because they really leaned into the pop part of pop punk. As I've said before,
sure, and I think there was a lot of people that were fans of Blink that had no conception of punk in a way that I don't think that quite applies to Green Day. And I've cut out a clip of Finn saying this before on one of my old videos on Green Day, and I've said it many times. Green Day was a punk band with poppy side effects. Blink-182, they were that as well, but I think you can receive them as a pop band with a punk veneer to them that stylize themselves in punk fashion. Now, if you know anything about the band, that's not exactly true. They were absolutely a punk band, but I can understand them being received in that way.
They were basically a punk boy band, and this video was full of references to mainstream pop artists like Christina Aguilera, Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees, and NSYNC. And so they were really like the polar opposite of Nirvana and Green Day, or some of the other weird artists that got big in the 90s, like Presidents of the United States of America, in that those other bands did end up becoming big mainstream successes, but very unexpectedly. These were basically grimy DIY bands that on paper really shouldn't have ever gotten any kind of commercial success. And when they did get that success, they made no compromises, and the mainstream actually changed to embrace their values rather than the other way around. And Blink was an authentic punk band, but they blew up specifically because they were non-threatening and palatable to that audience of mainstream suburban teenagers who watched TRL and were looking for something a little bit more edgy than NSYNC, but not as edgy or dark as Alice in Chains. And then
that's true. I also think their music reflected popular music. Like that's always the case with any forms of like pop punk. They're generally the pop in that equation is reflective of whatever the mainstream music is at the time. And again, as he mentioned, that's like the boy band era. That's the shiny Britney Spears era. So it makes sense that popular punk rock would also kind of reflect that style of music, as sacrilege as that might be to some people within the rock community.
of course, there was Woodstock 99, which that's a whole other conversation. But that
Woodstock 99 exists for people to make documentaries about, including myself. I'm gonna have some Woodstock 99 content coming your way this summer. Look forward to that. It's my turn. Netflix and HBO, you've had your turn. Now it's my turn.
Really kind of put the nail in the coffin of the 90s love affair with weirdness. And so that brings us to the 2000s, where, in my opinion, alternative culture was really defined by the same dynamic that created Blink-182. It's where we saw the rise of mall emo, hipster indie rock, whatever you want to call Metro Station, and all those other permutations of underground alternative culture that it had all the edges sanded off to make it more palatable. And if you want to hear more about that, check out my other video about alternative music that defined the 2000s. There's a link to that.
Next time we do a Saturday stream, we'll watch that video.
That video in the description, as well as a link to Mike the Snare. Make sure you check out his channel as well. And also, I want to thank everyone who's...
Well, thanks for that, Finn. Let's throw a little like on that video. If you're watching this, I don't got to tell you who Finn is. may like him. You may not. Well, not for me to say. Guy definitely has his haters out there, but he makes good content, I think, for sure. Okay. Let's check out what Bad Religion was up to in 1998 when they were on MTV's 120 Minutes from the Warped Tour. So this next clip, which I have not seen, will have a lot of threads that we talk about on this channel. Let's check it out.
For a long time. Yeah, it's a great place to be with a road show.
Look at young Dr. Graffin. He's only like 52 there.
There's like 400 people traveling around together. Something like 30 bands, and most of them, like you say, have at some point or another crossed paths with Bad Religion or been influenced by us, and it's just fun being a part of it all because there's a camaraderie. It really restores our faith in what the scene was all about in the first place.
To be fair to the good doctor, he has like the same amount of hair. He just had like some shoe polish going on over there in this era.
Place.
Yeah, the whole punk rock scene to begin with, absolutely. Now, you guys recorded in Greg's house up in Ithaca, New York.
Yes, we did.
Now, what was different about it this time? Was it kind of getting back to your roots on that one?
Well, yeah, we kind of spent more time worrying about the music rather than making sure the performance was exactly performed.
I'm assuming this is for No Substance, right? This would be the era.
Exactly. Is that redundant? Yes, it is, but that's okay.
That's okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a...
Yeah. Look at Hedson. He's so little. So young.
You kind of get back to the basics, like Suffer, No Control, those albums, like recording.
Shout out, though, to The Bruise by NoFX being in the background there.
In less time.
More group collaboration this time.
Now, as far as when the Warped Tour's over, what do you guys plan on doing? You going to tour America another time? I know you just did some dates on your own.
I think October we're planning to do a few weeks out here, and hopefully we'll come by to your town.
Right, very cool.
And your town.
I appreciate that. Well, let's go back to The Great Race right now. It's a great song. It's A Walk from Bad Religion on 120.
Guess I was wrong. It's a great race they were putting out there. Good song. A Walk.
20 minutes from the Warped Tour.
That's the video for A Walk. We won't play that. Let's see what else they got in here, though. Was that the only interview clip we got there? Probably. Well,
and that was Hepcat with No Worries.
Which, by the way, Hepcat, not exactly irrelevant to this channel. We just weren't going to sit through that. Let's see what else they have to say at the Warped Tour.
The album right on time here. I'm 120 minutes. And I'm at the Warped Tour in 98 in Asbury Park, New Jersey, my old stomping ground here. And I'm here with Save Ferris. Very cool California.
Save Ferris, I believe, played a show last night. More on that in a minute.
Band. I haven't seen you in a really long time, till right before you got signed. Amazing. Now, Monique, how is it? I mean, female fronting band, Warped Tour. A lot of people say it's very, testosterone deal. How's it been for you?
Well, I'm really glad that the Warped Tour is, encouraging women more now. And I'm glad to be a part of that because I love what I do. And I think women should be able to do what I do anytime they'd like. So.
That's right. Rock out and have a good time and play and put a lot of energy out, which a lot of bands do. It's cool, though. It's a great tour. Now, a lot of bands.
The follow-up album to the one that has Come On Eileen on it is actually really good. But they have the ironically the Atari's trap of being known for a cover, and that's a really tough spot to be as a band.
Bands on here you've been big fans of for a long time, right?
Yeah, NoFX, Bad Religion, a lot of the bands out here. Specials, oh my God, what a treat it is to like get to share the same stage as those guys. Because like probably some of the nicest bands on the tour, like definitely those guys.
Yeah, those guys are very cool. Linville, Neville, all those guys, and you guys are huge Specials fans.
Oh, definitely. I grew up listening to those guys, so to be able to kick it with those guys and eat wonderful catering food every day is a treat.
Warped Tour catering, the stuff of legends, right?
They drink us out on the table every day. Try to keep up with those guys. Oh, God.
Now, people that have seen the band live absolutely love you. I remember before you got signed, packing it in Los Angeles. Would you say your live thing is really the thing that people have to see to figure out what's going on with the band?
Definitely. There's
I don't think the album even does the band justice. I think you have to see the live performance.
But it is a really good album, though, I gotta tell you.
Yeah, of course.
Evan liked it enough to join the band, so.
And that's a good thing.
This is our new drummer, Evan Kilborn.
All right, excellent. Well, listen, we got more coming up in just a little while from the Warped Tour here on 120 Minutes, so stick around.
Hey, this is Scotty Morse with Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, and one of my favorite videos is
Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. That's not a phrase you have heard in over 20 years.
This is one that goes way back, and that would be Black Flag's TV party when Henry's raging and watching TV. You got to show this one.
Yeah, Damaged will never get old as an album. Ever. It is timeless. Let me chew on that as we read this. 1, 2, 3, 5. Let me chew on that for a second. I'll have something for you.
Hey, it's Matt Pinfield back here from the Warped Tour 98 in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and I'm with the guys from Sprung Monkey. It's cool.
There's another name I haven't heard in forever. Sprung Monkey.
Here with Steve, Tony, and Chuck. Tony, tell me a bit about, the scene in San Diego has been thriving for a long time, man. Is that a great place for you guys? Was it a good place for you to get started out?
It's really cool down there because San Diego, music scene is pretty diverse. There's a lot of different sounds there, so we kind of all picked up on that. That's in our music a lot. It comes out different styles, different sounds, different, just different tastes.
That's cool. What kind of things in the San Diego scene do you like a lot?
What about San Diego?
Yeah, the San Diego bands. Is there anybody in particular you really like?
Blink, Unwritten Law, Bucko 9, all cool guys. Definitely cool guys.
Really cool ska and punk bands that are there. That's excellent. Hey, Steve, tell us a bit about, you guys are going to actually be on the third Surfrider Foundation album, right?
Yeah.
Unwritten Law needs a bit of a revival. Everyone's getting their revival. We need to appreciate Unwritten Law more. They just disappeared, man. I don't even know what happened to them. I'd have to do research to figure out, are they still around? What's their deal? But they really just fell away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to do Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville.
Yeah, they could.
It's for the Surfrider Foundation, good benefit, good cause. Yeah. Those guys just do incredible things for all of us pretty much, so we're pretty happy to be a part of that.
That's cool. Music for Our Mother Ocean #3. Yeah. That's a great choice for a cover. That ought to be cool.
I hope so.
It's like to check it out. It'll be interesting. Guys, thanks for coming by, man. It's cool. Glad you guys are doing it. Good to have you on. We've been showing your video, both of them, actually. So we'll be back with more from the Warped Tour right after this. Stick around.
Baby gets used to the waterbed in the guest room. I know.
All right. Thank you, Nickelodeon.
Welcome back to MTV's 120 Minutes. I'm Louis Larchin. This is Brett, and that's Greg, and they're from Bad Religion.
We will watch that another time. That is them from 93 on the show. Let me sneeze. Mute button, where are you? Jeez. There we go. Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3, 5. Top 3 Bad Religion albums, in my opinion, off the top of my head. I would go with, I don't know if this would be a particular order. Let me just give you my top 3. Suffer. Against the Grain. Process of Belief, maybe. Process of Belief and No Control to me are antagonistic towards each other. They go one-on-one. I might be a little biased having Process of Belief in there that high, but without giving it too deep of thought, those would be my top 3 Bad Religion songs. Okay. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about something that was going down this weekend. Today, as I am streaming this is April 8th. Yesterday was April 7th. And in any case, it was the night that the original lineup of the Ataris, I should say the original lineup, the Solong Astoria era of the Ataris performed in California. They had a show, I believe, last night in Anaheim, tonight in Los Angeles. Could be vice versa. Not sure. Not important. It's been really cool and interesting, though, to see that tour or this run of shows has been pretty successful. I believe they sold out or close to selling out both nights. They brought in Save Ferris, they brought in Sam I Am, they brought in Mess, they brought in a lot of bands that would be associated with them. So for a show that I think was like just at the House of Blues, just a club show, very, very high quality stuff. No Control, How Could Hell Be Any Worse, Into the Unknown. I really love No Control. How Could Hell Be Any Worse is a good album, but I think it's very different than the rest of their catalog. Credit for what they did with Into the Unknown, but I can't vibe with that album. Just not my thing. Wish it was, but can't do it. As I was saying with the Ataris, let me show you something here real quick. One second. My plan at one point was to do a complete and total video breakdown of the Ataris. I got to, which I believe was at this point 23 pages worth of script about the Ataris that I was planning on peaking this month. I did a ton of research, listened to a ton of podcasts, read some books, did all kinds of stuff, checked out all kinds of internet sources. I dove into this thing. The project, though, I think was too big for what it is that I wanted to take on. So I'm going to keep those notes. I'm going to keep those research. There's other pieces of research, newspaper articles, tons of stuff I went down. For now, this stream will have to sort of serve as a bit of a tribute to 20 years of that album and that band as a whole. Now, the reason why I wanted to acknowledge that band, and we'll watch some clips of some older stuff by them and going back to 2003. One of the reasons why I was curious about it is because I feel like the way that band is talked about and as conceived of.
Can a pioneering punk band be resuscitated?
Speaking of Bad Religion, this whole Bad Religion video. I get mad at the way that the Ataris are talked about in modern discourse. They are kind of the go-to of okay, you had a one-hit wonder from back in this time period, and they are the band that you'll put out there. Because not only were they a one-hit wonder, their one hit, similar to Save Ferris, was a cover. So they didn't even get to own their one hit. And I think that's really unfortunate because they were a really good band on that album, but also leading up to that, they were a very good band. Sorry, the notification was bugging me. And they were a good punk band too. And I think because of that really bad album, Welcome to the Night, which I know it's got its fans, but similar to Into the Unknown, I just don't know what the hell they were doing. What do you say about Into the Unknown? Into the Unknown wasn't the best one musically, but I'm amazed by the fact that Punk Band did the most punk move ever and made a prog album, pissed off punks. Long live Mighty Bad Religion. Agree with that. Don't think they needed that album. And so similarly, the Ataris made like an indie album in 2007, and that put the death knell in them. They were a one-hit wonder in that they had one big song, but they're also a one-hit wonder in that they had one run with a major label. They were with a major label, they had a hit, and then they departed. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, but mostly it was their punk rockness. I gotta say, that had a lot to do with it. It was because they wanted full control, and I think they were actually trending, similar to the comment you made there in the chat, to wanting to do their own thing, and the label wanted just more hits. And they didn't want to provide it. There became tensions within the band, and they ended up leaving Columbia. Now, that's probably like a good time to not be with the major label. Would have been in the late 2000s With that said, it might be in an even worse time to be on a small independent label, because the label they went with after Columbia went out of business like months into the release of their new album. So they were essentially a new unsigned band that stayed extremely independent, like irrationally independent, some might say. And so they live mostly as a band now, where lead singer and songwriter Chris Rowe tours with a regular set of musicians, but not the musicians that you would associate with the golden era, certainly not the So Long Astoria era or the Kung Fu era either. So they are kind of considered a cover band by some. Now, that's a whole bigger discussion, like how much of a band needs to be there for it to be considered a legitimate thing. I think that's a further discussion. And it also makes shows like they're having tonight and last night very special when they do bring in that specific lineup. There are plenty of takes about this band online. Obviously, Chris Rowe himself had not the best reputation, I would say, about 10 years ago, where he had a couple of outbursts on stage and he was the one-hit wonder, and he just seemed like a pretty angry dude all the time in that time period. But I also think that is a function of the internet and what we see, as he said in many interviews, and I don't know whether to believe him or not, but I could take him as his word, that, you know, he's just a regular old chill dude. And his worst moments sometimes have been caught on tape, which I can see. I also think he's probably pretty hard-headed. And as explored on, I want to say, Dave's Music Channel and other places that had some really good Atari's content on there, that is always going to be the rub with him. He's hard-headed, he's fiercely independent, and so maybe they were never destined to go beyond the moment that they had, that one moment in time in 2003, 2004, when they had Boys of Summer. They're one of the biggest bands in the world, and they're on TRL, and they're on football games. They are all over the place. The band is huge. And every time when I was doing research to sort of get greater context, so many of the articles went back to the fact that they were a tried and true punk band. They weren't the most hardcore punk bands, but when we talk about bands like these Lookout bands, bands like a Lagwagon, like a No Use for a Name, they are right in that mix of bands. They're like right at that level until they sign to the major, and then they shoot up. But I actually think that if you watch some of the videos that are on Dave's Music Channel, some of the members tell the stories of just how much they were not ready for that as a band, from a business perspective, from a logistical perspective. They were really still a punk band, a tried and true punk band, right before they blew up, and they did not have the infrastructure in place to sustain that. Have you ever? Yeah, I need to give the Offspring more love, Julio, because I get accused of being an Offspring hater. I definitely need to give them more love on this channel. I think they're relevant band to what I'm talking about here with the Ataris, though, as a band that, when they made it to the top, were thought of as kind of differently than they were when they were on the come up. So with that said, I wanted to check out some Ataris content to kind of close off the stream here. I want to check out an interview that Chris Rowe recently did with K-Rock and break some of that down. Also, we can look at some Astoria era footage along with some footage of right before the Astoria era to get kind of a sense of what the Ataris were like right before everybody knew them as the band that covered Boys of Summer. So let's check out what Chris had to say to K-Rock, and then we'll close it with some of this live footage.
Well, hello there. It's Klein Alley Show from K-Rock. But more importantly, we're joined by the great Chris Rowe of the Ataris. Here
Hello,
we go.
everyone. Thanks for having me.
20th anniversary. Welcome. Thank you for spending your anniversary with us in So Long Astoria.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This is a crazy time we're in now, where nostalgia. I feel like if you can just keep living and keep playing music, you're going to have like these big moments now where all of this stuff from when I was getting started even in radio, early 2000s, right? I think 2003, So Long Astoria, it's having this crazy resurgence right now.
It's true. I find that every 10 years or so, it's like that new group of kids, especially now with the internet, Spotify, everything.
I know the point he's probably about to make there. I would counter that and say, like, it takes like 20 years sometimes. Like with the Ataris, I think it took 20 years. Limp Bizkit, okay? It took 20 years for them to be reappreciated. If you look at, we're in 2023 now, if you look at how the Ataris were thought of in like 2012, 2013. That's like the bottom of how they were regarded.
People rediscover all these bands from like when we were kids. Like for me, when I was young, you'd see like, I remember being like, 15 years old and seeing like Metallica wear like a Misfits shirt or a Ramones shirt or whatever, and being like, hey, I love that band. And knowing that there's some kids that are younger than me that are discovering those bands, or like so many people for me would come up to me.
For sure, the mainstream bands were always the backlinks, as I like to call them, to the cooler bands, right? To the more hip bands. Like how many people discovered the Descendants and Screeching Weasel off of Blink-182? Like generations and generations. I need to blow my nose real quick. Let me go on mute. I swear there's like pollen that radiates off my microphone and makes me just want to sneeze.
Like I discovered like Jawbreaker through the Ataris, and to me that's always an honor because
I did discover Jawbreaker through the Ataris. I thought the Ataris wrote Boxcar before, I actually knew.
Those bands always meant a lot to me growing up. So yeah, it's nice to be that gateway drug for some young kid in the Midwest like I was. I mean, I grew up in the smallest town in Indiana, and it's not like you had like an Amoeba Records on your corner. You had to like really search out music to find it.
I didn't discover the Descendants through the Ataris, but I would definitely say I understood them more by listening to the Ataris, by listening to Song for a Mixtape and all the Descendants references. It made me conceptualize what that style of music was, I think, a whole lot better. The Ataris were a nice way of interpreting the Descendants.
When people are finding, bands like you, as, young people do now, are you interested in how they're discovering the new music too? Because people are also finding things on Spotify. They're finding things on, the radio. They're finding things through vinyl and cassettes and CDs now. I mean, cassettes are making a big comeback.
I think, honestly, the most important part is that they get there. For me, I think when, in the early 90s, when like, punk rock or whatever it was for me hadn't broke into like a mainstream kind of faction, it was still like a thing where it belonged to this little group of like misfits and like weirdos. So when Green Day and all those bands broke big, we loved those bands. We listened to all the Lookout Records bands and those the indie bands, and we were like, this is our thing. Now these people that would beat us up would listen to these bands. So it was kind of weird. But now it's like, I am happy if some sort of like alternative culture reaches some person that maybe all they knew was like mainstream music, because it's going to change their life. Because for me, the only thing that really helped me through those hard times and saved me in times when I needed it, that music was it. It's like a form of therapy,
We were saying that it's kind of cool how we missed, like we're throwback to like when you used to have to buy weed, you'd have to like find a guy in a parking lot somewhere, you'd have to like coordinate it, and maybe he was there, maybe he wasn't, maybe he'd rip you off and sell you oregano. And
There's
now
some
it's
beauty
just,
about that,
right?
though.
But now you just go, but it was kind of cool. It was like an adventure, like finding music, and now
I
you just
agree.
walk into a store with a Visa card, you can leave with an ounce of weed, and like similarly to like music now, it's like, oh, just go online, type in, boom, boom, and there it is. Where it was like, it used to be this kind of mission of discovery and who you got it from and where you got it. And
Yes.
I remember this like old like DGC Rarities album that was like,
Yeah.
we had to get it like from Japan, and there was like all this cool stuff. So it is interesting, but now that people are discovering, like, let's just talk, for instance, Boys of Summer, which is probably, if not the biggest, one of your biggest songs, not originally a song that you wrote, but people are discovering your version first, listening to your version first, and then being like, Don Henley is ripping you off. Do you feel like that's happening?
Because his version is better than the Don Henley version. Guns N' Roses Knocking on Heaven's Door is better than Bob Dylan's. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes the cover is better than the original. Hot take, NoFX's Olympia is better than Rancid's Olympia.
That's always weird. There are those people that are like, hey, I'm like, no, that was written by not only Don Henley, but Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers guitar player Mike Campbell wrote the music. So it's like, credit is due. We covered that song in tribute to my grandmother who had passed away in 2002, and she lived down in Florida. And the story is I would always go down and visit her with my parents when I was a little kid. When my parents split up one year, I was down there for the first time ever without my mom and dad. I was missing them. My grandmother, being the cool woman she was, she's like, let me take you out, let you pick out one record, any record you want. I remember taping that song off the radio on my little jam box, and on like, probably some sort of weekly countdown, and I loved the like kind of
He told this story a lot before, but I think the more significant thing is it was this. It was that special little song to them. They did not intend for this to blow up like that. They didn't want it. They wanted to be known for their music. Talked about it with Mike DeMonte about a year and a half ago about Alkaline Trio. Kind of being a little reticent on some covers because they knew they would probably blow up off of covers, and they didn't want to be just known for that. And I think as you learn more about the story of the Ataris, the fact that they blew up off a cover financially wasn't the best thing for them either, as compared to what it would be had they have just blown up on a more organic or original song, which they pushed out singles for that album that were well received. It just all got like eaten up by the Boys of Summer. Would you consider Matt Freeman the best punk bassist? I would. Obviously Fat Mike is right up there with him. But I mean, Matt Freeman as a bass player in total, as just like you need a bass player for any genre of music, I think he's right up there. He's right up there with the best. Punk Historian has a really good video on punk bassists, because you got to go with guys like Carl Alvarez as well, and the weird stuff that they play. But I also think you can consider Didi Ramon the greatest punk bassist of all time, and he obviously is not as flashy as a guy like Matt Freeman. It doesn't carry songs the way Fat Mike does. However, what he did suited those songs so perfectly. And if he wanted to be like this virtuoso bass player, I don't think the Ramones sound like the Ramones. I generally, and it's like I'm a curse because I wanted to play bass and I wanted to play punk, and I thought, it's got 4 strings, it's got to be easy. The bass player in the punk band is always like the best musician. Like oboes, it's the bass player or the drummer. The rhythm sections are always the most important part of any punk band.
Feeling of it. So I bought that Don Henley album, Building the Perfect Beast. I listened to it the entire time I was there. I thought about missing my family, about this rainy summer, being stuck inside, not getting to go to any of the theme parks, because it was like what you did as a kid. But I was stuck in their little trailer listening to music, and it helped me through that time. So we covered that song and just put it on the record as kind of an afterthought. And then K-Rock played it first. We were literally playing the Weenie Roast. The rest of the band had never played that live. It was just, me and the drummer recorded.
The footage of him playing that is on the internet as well.
And those guys, I taught them that song backstage at the Weenie Roast. They're like, "Congratulations, guys! That's your new single." We're like, "What?" And we were expecting to do a single for the song "My Reply," and we're like, "Okay, well, I guess we got to teach you this." We went on stage, played it at the Weenie Roast the first time ever. So it's kind of a trip. Sometimes you'll record stuff and then you'll go back and teach it to the band later. But we always did things backwards. It's typical Ataris. But yeah, it was. I'm grateful that it turned a lot of people onto our music and that they were able to discover some of the songs we wrote, and we still play it to this day. I'm honored.
And we're going to hear you play it today.
Correct. Yes.
You guys are going to be playing tonight at the Wiltern. You have shows tonight and tomorrow night.
Yes.
You haven't performed in a while for obviously various reasons, COVID being one of them, but you had a crazy COVID experience, right?
I did, yeah, in early 2020.
My mom got COVID twice, and I think he nearly died one of the times.
We had a tour booked, was ready to go out and play some shows. Not only did the first show, the venue in Nashville, get struck by a tornado and it destroyed the venue, that show got canceled, and then COVID happened and the whole tour got canceled like every other band. And immediately, like 3 days later, I was around my daughter for the first time we rekindled in a very long time, and then got COVID. And I had it so bad, ended up in the hospital. I was sick for 5 weeks. Still have a blurry spot on my left eye. Had all this really crazy stuff happen, the worst sickness I ever went through. And it took me a long time to ease back into playing shows, because it was really traumatizing going through that. I know a lot of people who have lost a mother or father, family members. So I empathize with those people, and I'm still one of those people that just really take it very seriously. So it was like, I went out and did some shows with Lit and Hoobastank and Alien Ant Farm, and that was like, okay, I can dip back into this. It was mostly big venues and outdoor.
I think he did them acoustically though too. So he was talking about like his hesitancy with the pandemic. So he was able to travel on his own, his own car, his own van, do his own thing, stay away from people, which the Ataris to this day, like, I don't think they'll ever tour in a bus again. Period. Like, they have mastered van touring, the version of the Ataris that tours, at least.
Tour shows. So I'm like, let's maybe plan a reunion thing around this 20th anniversary. And so I just called up the old guys and was like, hey, this will be like the longest time off the Ataris have ever had. By that point, it'll be 3 years. We never took that more. We would tour 9 months out of the year. We were road dogs. So I was like, I want the first thing back to be the most impactful, exciting things to the fans. And I knew that they would be like, what? And so, it was.
What I do hope is that there's a buildup here. In those other interviews I've seen with John Collara specifically, the guitar player from that era, he notes that like he wants Rowe to perform Ataris music when he does his solo stuff as like Chris Rowe of the Ataris or something like that, and just have the Ataris be like the Astoria era lineup, and they do that and build it up, and maybe there's anticipation for a record, maybe there's anticipation for a song. I don't know if they can ever quite recapture that and re-grab that, but I think they could build it up to more than what they're at right now, which is when they're not doing these shows that are these special shows, which these special shows, obviously there's an audience for. Obviously people care about that. They've almost sold out, 2 nights in LA. There's demand there for that era of the band and some of those songs. And I think they could do okay. But if it's always just going to be the Ataris, if like the Ataris I'm going to see at the When We Were Young festival in October is going to be Chris Rowe and the other musicians, it's a little less exciting, a little less into it. Now I know Mike Davenport might have some travel restrictions because of some of his legal stuff. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 5. Again, I would advise you to check out. Jack has a really good video on that as well. It really comes down to legal disputes. That's what it is, and they couldn't agree on things, and they were going to go in different directions in the early 90s, and the mudslinging has just been so petty since then.
It's just a natural thing to do, and we'll make it 2 shows. Just LA, Anaheim, very special, kind of where the Ataris came up. Even though I'm from Indiana, this was kind of the first place.
And Santa Barbara is like the home base of the band.
To give the Ataris love.
Even before the COVID and the tornado, 2 years before that, you got involved in a high-speed chase. Well, you were not in a high-speed chase, but someone was being chased.
Are you in a movie of Final
I
Destination?
feel like
Chris?
God
What is
hates
going
you
on?
right now because I didn't realize that you got what, like T-boned by a car that was pretty much running from the cops, right?
Yeah, not too far from here. I was coming down. I was in LA, and I was coming down just behind where like the arc light was, near where Amoeba was, and I was about to fly overseas. I was coming back from the vet with my French bulldog Gracie, who's passed away by now. But we were coming up Vine Street, and this guy was getting chased by the cops coming around from Sunset down Vine at like 90 miles an hour. And he, like we see high-speed chases every night on the TV, and he went straight into me. Luckily, I was driving a van, or I would have been dead. It
Only took me an hour and a half.
Destroyed. My van crashed into other cars that were parked. I was stuck in it. The van was smoking. I had to crawl out the window. My dog flew down under the rubble of the van. I thought that the dog died in the accident, but she lived. She got a limp, and
that was all over
bad. I
TMZ
got
at the time.
Damaged pretty bad, and
Did the police thank you for stopping the chase?
I know they didn't have to do the spike strips.
Yeah, that's true. I was the human spike strip.
You were spike strips. You got yourself a new nickname now.
Yeah, the human spikes. I hope it doesn't stick, God forbid. But yeah, they were actually like, it was really funny. They were like, yeah, you should be grateful you were driving that big van, or you'd be dead. I'm like, thanks for telling me the obvious thing that I already see looking at this record. But yeah, it was really kind of the most tender moment as I was sitting in there on the side of Vine Street. Like I had to wait because they had guns drawn on this guy and he wouldn't get out. And I was sitting there, I couldn't go back in my vehicle and collect my things. But this homeless man, unhoused man, came up and he's like, here, and he tried to give me a blanket. And I was like, no, this is a really sweet moment. I didn't take the blanket because I was like, I don't know what to spin, I'm OCD. But I was also like, man, that's really sweet of him. And like, we're just sitting there, and some person who has, probably, is not as well off was doing this nice gesture, and it really stuck with me. But yeah, it was a heavy time.
So it sounds like it's been an eventful 20 years since So Long a Story dropped. Yeah,
it was. Got pneumonia the year before that.
Oh my
I feel like
God.
God has tried to kill me in the last.
How did you make it to this anniversary?
I need to write a book. I'll tell you.
You
let's
should.
get that done.
Well, and you've got, you
I really would like Roe, because he's such a good storyteller, to have a podcast. Chris, if you want to do one, my DMs are open, man. I will host and give you the floor. But he has lived such an interesting life, I think, and in an understated way, lived such an interesting life that his broader life story, I think, needs to be told, and be told in the right hands.
You've lived through that. You've lived through COVID. You lived through pneumonia. Now you're playing today. You've got shows tonight. What's next? Because we heard a rumor that you might be going on tour with Everclear. Is there any truth to this?
I cannot confirm or deny that, but
again, I would guess, and we'll see what comes out of this weekend. Maybe there's a lot of good feelings out of this weekend, but it's probably the other guys. It's probably the hired guns. No disrespect to those guys. I know he enjoys really playing with those guys, and if you watch footage from when they play currently, like, they sound the same. There's just something about, you know how an original lineup is, or a lineup that recorded an album. There's a certain nostalgia there.
Who knows? Anything's possible. There's a lot of great bands we love, and I'd love to tour with that band. So we'll see what happens.
You are in Vegas for sure as part of the When We Were Young. You're going to be doing that, right?
We're playing When We Were Young.
See you there. By the way, if any of you guys are at When We Were Young, hit me up. Maybe we'll have a get together or something.
Young Festival, and there's 2 nights now. The first one sold out, then the second one sold out probably like way faster than it was like 20 minutes each, or it was something ridiculous. And it's gonna be great to finally play with Green Day. It was like one of those bands all these years that like somehow never ended up playing with that band. There's a lot of great bands.
I wonder how that ever happened. Green Day's on some bigger tours though, in like 98, 99, right around the time the Ataris are headlining in the Blue Skies era. And then they kind of fade when Green Day has like their second legendary status in the mid 2000s. Even though the Ataris are still there, but the Ataris are also headlining in that era. And then again, like I said, they just completely fall off a cliff right around that same time.
Michelle Branch, I thought that's really cool. I was like, everyone else was like, what is it? I'm like, no, man, that's like the coolest one on the bill, probably next to Green Day. I was super stoked.
Do you
I
get
still love it,
nostalgic when you look at like that lineup? Obviously, the goal is right. Everyone's like, "Oh man, it's just all throwback stuff." Because for so many people, you were the soundtrack to their high school, right? And then now these are people that are seeing you potentially again, kids of their own, and they're there. It's got to be that kind of surreal moment because, and we were talking about this the other day. Like, is it more fun to go to? Let's just say you saw a band in high school and now you're going to see them again, 20 years later, because it seems like that's happening now. For us, the fans, we were arguing over what's more fun. Is it more fun to be carefree in high school and be like, "Oh my God, I'm at a show and try and weed for the first time," whatever, or now when you're there? You've got adult responsibilities, but also you kind of appreciate it more. You guys up on stage, to us, you kind of always look the same because you're like they're playing the same songs, the same band. Well, but is it
Option A? It's fun to do the old guy thing, to do the nostalgia, but you're approximating something that was much funner 20 years ago. If we're being honest, it's awesome that it still exists, but it is the case that it is a cosplay of something else.
Feel different now? Does it feel like the same when you get back together with these guys to do So Long Astoria again?
Good question. I feel like for me, there is definitely a more refined kind of thing about my life now. Back then, I was young. You never figured life out. I kind of like discovered that. When you're like, it was always a joke. Like when you're 20, you're always like, oh, I have stuff so much more figured out now. When you're 30, you say the same thing. Finally, at like 45, I'm like,
I ain't got shit figured out. Nothing. Not a damn thing.
I'm never going to figure this out. But I mean, I do feel like now
I got one thing figured out.
Everybody's grown up to the point where, there was never any bad blood, at least not for me. I don't hold grudges with anybody I ever played with, and, it includes everyone. But I do feel like everybody grows up to a point now where, the music.
What about that drummer for Bowling for Soup, Chris? You have a little bit of bad blood with him, just a little bit, just a hair, a pinch.
Music, it starts, at least for me, to become the main focus. And so, I hope that for everyone. I feel I can only speak for myself. But as far as like the nostalgia thing, I do feel like as a fan, I went and saw like Weezer play Pinkerton. I saw Jane's Addiction play Ritual, De La Habitual. I love going to that because as I understand, I think for our fans, that album not only encapsulates a time and a place of where they were, but it's like, it's like stepping back into some sort of like place in their lives. And so I am there to just like play those songs as best as I can and just hopefully, take them back to that place. Like for me,
So for me, it is the So Long Astoria stuff because I was into that album and I've listened to it a lot lately. It holds up, absolutely holds up. But when I want to go back to that time and place, I want to go back to like 6 months before Astoria came out with the Ataris, the End Is Forever era. And they're so tight as a band. They're so good, so much energy. They're the right level of popularity before becoming kind of uncool. Like it all really fits together really well.
I tend to not be, you would not know in my lyrics, but I'm not the super nostalgic guy. I tend to live in this moment because this moment is what.
Your best song is about nostalgia. Nostalgia is a character in your best song.
What counts, and I make my life what I want it to be. I don't, Throwback Thursday, Flashback Friday. Just for me, that's not my thing. But I get that with other people because to me, my best days are ahead of me. I am very proud of what I've done, and I love going out and playing these old songs.
But I think he's coming to that from his perspective. I don't think he's coming to that from his perspective as an artist that's producing the nostalgia. I don't think he's nostalgic for that necessarily because he did it. He lived it. I hear him talk, though, about other stuff that he was very much into when he was younger. And he has a ton of nostalgia for that. And again, the lyrics are all about, especially So Long Astoria, is about yearning for something in a moment that had passed. That is like the whole concept of that album.
What allows me to pay my bills, and I'm proud of everything I wrote. Still, 95% of our set on normal shows is all old songs, but I do get it, and I'm grateful that we're able to go out and play this record and take people back to where they were when this record came out. Hopefully, and hopefully it was a good place. Hopefully they don't remember like, oh my God, that person crushed me and broke my heart. But that's a lot of there's definitely that's in those songs. So
there's probably some people that lost their virginity during Boys of Summer.
Strange true story. My friend Tuck, who was in this band, The Biters, and he told me he's from Georgia, so I just wanted to tell the story in the area. He's like, man. I gotta talk like Tuck. He's like, you guys played the Masquerade, and I lost my virginity outside in an old Volvo in front of that show. I got kicked out. Me and my girlfriend were outside, and we had sex to end us forever outside. And I'm like, oh my God, Tuck, don't tell me this. I don't want this visual of my friend and getting it on outside the club. But yeah, that was the story he told me. I was just like, okay, cool.
Who knows?
Get some weird ones over the years, but yeah, that was up there.
Everyone has lost their virginity to the Atari songs. Well, we're gonna listen to some live music. We can't wait. But as always, we wrap up the interview with only 2 epic questions. We each have 1 question for you. These are both epic. Chris from the Ataris is joining us as we celebrate 20 years So Long Astoria. Ali, epic question number 1.
All right, Chris. When you were young, what was the best video game, Atari or otherwise?
Well, as a band with the Ataris, I loved Atari games, but so it's always a hard toss-up for me with Atari games and the first Nintendo system. But for Atari, it was Pitfall. For Nintendo, it was probably Legend of Zelda.
Oh, interesting.
Not a gamer, but those are some
I
good
love that game
choices.
too. I can probably still memorize the code to fight Tyson.
Right to Tyson, right? Skip the last joke. Go right to the top. Epic question number 2. No shortage of tattoos. Are there any tattoos on you that you regret terribly at this exact moment?
Yeah, man. My Scrabble letters of me and my ex-wife. It's the only tattoo I would change. Because, I don't think there's anybody in my life that I have disdain for,
Right.
even her. But at the same time,
But that's kind of cool, though. You want Scrabble letters.
yeah, you
because
can just fill it in.
Say it means anything.
It needs to be a word now. It needs to be like, I don't know, whatever has a D at the end of it. What would you make that into?
It needs to be a
has to end with
high-scoring
D.
word, too, though, in the Scrabble world.
Has to end with the word D, and it's
The
got to be
letter
high
D,
scoring. Divorced?
That would work, but I need a lot of room. But yeah, divorced.
All right, well, let's get to some music. Thanks so much for being here on K-Rock. We always consider this like home for you. Hopefully you feel the same way.
I do. Thank you.
And
I
can't
appreciate
wait to
it.
see you on the road. A variety.
Does he really appreciate it, though? Does he feel like K-Rock is home for him? Because, after all, they kind of forced Boys of Summer on him. Let's listen to a little old school Ataris as we kind of wind this stream down. Hold up one sec. Just to get a feel of what this band was like, again, right before they really blew up. I love how YouTube sends you the same notifications over and over and over again, as if like there are new notifications. Let's check them out here, and then we'll skip around on this. We won't watch the whole thing.
It's called I Won't Spit Another One Alone.
I love the YouTube generated chapter marker saying, I won't spit. They were always so linked to Lagwagon. Obviously, they had Lagwagon's old drummer on the first album. They were in constant like touring with those guys. Joey Cape produced some of their music. Mike Davenport went on to form Versus the World with a member of Lagwagon. And I just think that's the way to think about them. Think about them as Lagwagon, who was on a different label-ish. Obviously, the Ataris has some stuff on Fat as well. But like, I think Lagwagon, in a weird way, could have just had the same career. Maybe even No Use for a Name. Could have had that career had they have been capitalized at that exact time.
this much to me, but I promise you that you know. Fire witnesses is what it would be. It's gonna spin all your time with me. We together forever. We fly small houses, South Central LA. Friends up in peace, we will put you in a gang. Just as long as we're together.
I want to say this song went on 2 albums as well. Another band too that I always feel like their energy just got captured live so much better than it ever really did in the studio. I think maybe the peak of them in the studio is So Long, but it doesn't sound like what they would have sounded like live. That's like the peak of a well-refined, well-produced band, which from my knowledge, they were not big on producers. I know I said Joey Cape came in, Warren Fitzgerald early on. They used a different producer on this. I'm not sure whose name it is, but the producers were just kind of there to do like the Rick Rubin thing, to be like, do you like the vibe? Do you not like the vibe?
All right, let me know the guys. All right.
And of course, this is on the Fat EP. Looking Forward to Failure.
Since I saw you on my so-called bike, I've been writing you these letters asking you to be my wife. It's been almost a year and still I've got no reply.
They also had a great split with Useless ID. Remember Useless ID? I think they're actually still around. They actually put an album like 2 years ago. That split was amazing they had together, though.
That you fuck some other guy. So what's it in my
And this is this all-ages club in Santa Barbara called the Coach House. And some of the proceeds for that will go to good causes as well. So if you're up in Santa Barbara, come up there and whatever, and it'll be special. This song's called Between You and Me.
Between You and Me, I think, was the best of that EP, of the Fat EP. And a song that Fat Mike didn't think was a good idea to have on the EP. And I think he got proved wrong on that one.
to come over. That you wonder, what does it feel to know I still want you? Let's go! Why do we always seem to run when we can? Let's unsplit. And I listen to my heart and it's like I still run back for
So that's one, like, if you play this song in a crowd of people who only heard the band after 2003, they're probably shocked because all they've ever heard is how this was this cool punk band before. They're probably completely thrown off when they hear this song.
Anyway, the title says that.
There we go. Blue Skies and Broken Hearts doesn't get the credit it deserves for being an angry album. We know End Is Forever is angry. So if you break down their early discography, Anywhere But Here is their youthful I Hate My Hometown album. Blue Skies Broken Hearts has the reputation for being their super pop punk album, like the album that they could have broke off of, and they had offers to go to the majors with that album in the wake of it. They ultimately stayed around Kung Fu for one more record. That album does a little more angry than is completely given credit for. End Is Forever is just a dark pop punky album. Not dark in like an emo kind of sense of dark, but just like it's another angry record. But I say that because End Is Forever doesn't get that. Now, Song Astoria is the like satisfied record. It's the inverse of Anywhere But Here. It's the we're home now, we're good, we grew up, it's all good, which is the opposite of Anywhere But Here, where, you know, there's the song about, you know, getting the hell out of this Anderson town and how much he really hates it here. Good songs, though, for real. All four of those albums are good, and people don't always want to consider the first album part of the Ataris proper because it didn't have most of this lineup, but it had some heavy hitters. It had Chris's friend Jason from his hometown. It had Derek Plort, who was the drummer from Lagwagon, and it had Marco 72, who would go on to have tons of success with Sugar Cult.
Seems like my own, unknown, unknown. Feeling nothing but ourselves. Could be scarier than any crowded room. Unknown, alone. Myself.
And this version of the song on Blue Skies is the acoustic version. This is the full band version, which is also on the Fat split, on the Fat EP. It's two different versions because there's the version that I would say I know better is the Blue Skies version. Is it acoustic or is it just like more chill? Now I'm starting to question that. I go listen to stuff all day long.
But you gotta make us closer to you because not that like that makes us cool or anything, but it's better because we can like see. We're closer. I can see you. All right. Speaking of stupid shit, this song is a silly song called "Teenage Riot." All right.
Really good song, underrated song by them. I say underrated. I think they kept it in the set deep into the Astoria era.
So, yeah. It'll sound like this.
And all of these songs are just a hair faster than the album version. It sounds like a kid back there on the Skins. He's just a hair quicker than they are on the album.
Screws up on me. No matter what you do, still some things never change. Seen it all the world, met a lot of friends, got a lot of fun memories. Something like playing a basement show on a Saturday night in Pennsylvania, start the show. Here we go, jumping in the crowd. We gotta tell this building. Come show up, as usual. Try to move it up, girl. It's time to show one more. What it's like to be a kid today. Yeah! Gonna have a teenage riot. It's gonna start today.
This, of course, Losing Streak, the opener on Blue Skies. Not one of my favorites of the album, though, to be honest. I'm probably going to go through it kind of quick.
That's for you. And this song is also for all you guys. They're all for you. They're all for you guys. This is a sillier song. It's off our first record. And it's called Hey Kid.
Love this. Just sit back and relax and listen to this.
About my life, Robert's about the scene. I hate this fucking song, and we see it was just a dream. Alright, here's the circle pit part, everybody. Bitch, 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 that's all you wanna do. Bitch, 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 got me the rules for you. Bitch, 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 that's all I have to say. Bitch, 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 we'll all just fade away. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Archivist. Glad to see you could check in on a Saturday, as we're kind of just kick back, no real focus today. Checking out some Ataris, thinking about 20 years of So Long Astoria, but kind of taking a little peek into their kung fu stuff.
Just as long as I act cool and people will suck up to me, you realize that I'm a fake, and that's what I'm always going to be. I dreamer and a kid who changes every day. Someone that has to chat when he's got nothing to say. Nothing to say, yeah. One, two, bitch, bitch, bitch. It's all you ever know. Bitch, bitch, bitch. No one's more fucking you. Bitch, bitch, bitch. Your life is just a trend. Bitch, bitch, bitch. We'll see you happy at the end. Yeah, yeah.
And that's funny because the album version is so much more like bouncy, and I would say even poppier than that version. Not that that was like the most hardcore version of that song.
Alright, no, it's thanks to those guys. Yeah, this guy's been on a lot of shows with us over the years, and they fucking rock. So go buy their shit. This is a cover song. Here we go. It's by Jawbreaker.
So I'll be honest with you, I thought the Ataris wrote this back in the day. Yeah, we just played Between You and Me, and the My Hotel here from the fat one. You don't like Anywhere But Here? I really like that album, like a lot. It's like it's got that first album syndrome though. It's a proto version of what the band would become, and as I mentioned earlier, it's the inverse of So Long Astoria. It's the I Hate My Hometown album, and So Long Astoria is I Love My Hometown.
It's called Boxcar. Here we go.
And Don't Throw Rocks at Me. I might like this version of Boxcar a little more. I don't know. It's different enough though, because you have this sort of vocal stylings in the Jawbreaker version. See, their version is a little more upbeat than the Jawbreaker, just which is a little, I'd say, like refined. I don't know, that's not the greatest way to phrase that, but.
What's the score? Got a friend, her name is Boxcar. Cigarettes and beer and Elsa. Hair is blue, now it's green. I like her line, she is the same. My enemies are all too familiar. They're the ones who used to call me friend. Come around outside, your guide lights, passing out, but you're passing us. 1, 2, 3, 4, who's drunk? What's the score? You're all alone, 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 you're on your own.
Goes. We got Johnny.
Let's go.
And that's Summer Wind is how they opened up End Is Forever. Actually, they didn't open it up. They opened it up with Give It Up on Love, I want to say. We can move past that a little bit, though.
You play, because I've never seen anyone so enthusiastic.
Oh, and of course, the tradition. You got to bring someone off from the crowd to play San Dimas. Which, that is not San Dimas. Wrote our names on the observation deck. That's that one. I don't want to listen to that. Good song. I just don't feel like listening to it. It's that one's on. It's on that Warped comp that I always talk about, and then it was that's like an acoustic, more raw version. And then on So Long Astoria, this version that they're kind of playing right here ends up on So Long Astoria.
Thank you for listening to our new song.
Yeah, he's a weird dude, man, with that. The upside down backwards. And then some of their tunings are really weird too. That he talks about. And he's like, he has a few songs too where he'll have one string specifically out of tune just to fit the song. He talks about getting it from the Rolling Stones. It's weird. You need a mirror to understand it. It's crazy.
Say that in a while, but we're trying to play all we know, so oh well. So this is our slower, I told him.
And this is one of those songs like I was telling you about that's just so angry. I'm sorry, archivist. I'm sorry to hear that. That's we were talking earlier. We watched an interview with him. I said he needs a book. He needs his own book, and I'm also willing to host his podcast weekly. That I could be the guy to keep him on track.
got a couple more left. Yeah. If we wouldn't have been recording the whole weekend, we would have practiced more and learned. All right, this guy can go. Play, my small youth. Who wants to help sing this?
Now I guess they'll go into San Dimas. Or as it says on the YouTube generated chapters, football. The one time I saw them live, it was actually one of the only times they ever had a female up there doing it. I've got, let's see, I have some photos from. Masked Pennywise, The Used, Rancid, more Pennywise, Masked. Not here, maybe. I don't know who that is. Blurry photo. Stun, remember them? STUN. Somewhere I got photos of that performance. One of these days I'll do the video of top 50 pop punk songs you need to hear before you die. This will be the Atari's representative song on there. Although it's not my favorite song by them. I think they close out this set with what I consider my favorite song by them.
Last night, I had a dream that we went to Disneyland. Went on all the rides, didn't have to wait in line. I took you to your house, where we stared up at the stars. Listen to your heartbeat, I felt you in my arms. We were at the river where we drifted at this too. Nothing could go wrong, we were shouting out at you.
No, Archivist, that was a little before my time. I went to a bunch in the early 2000s. I went from 03 to like 06, 07. I would have been like 9 or 10 in the 90s Warped Tours.
These are the things that make me free. I feel like I'm stuck in a stand by me. This night was. That was pretty good. It's our friend Dave. He works for us. Dave's gonna help me sing. Wishing you were here with me. What is to do something that we probably never. You call me up, so you see me out show. And now I'm stuck here. Don't you understand it when I say it's true? Drive you no records to do the things you want to do. I didn't have one you dedicate us all to you. Why only wish that this could be? Just stop your boyfriend and go out with me. I swear I treat you like a queen. You guys are
Once again, shout out to the Punk Broadcasting System VHS DVD for having this video on there. Chose to hang out with the girl instead. Well, you know, young minds will do that. That'll happen. What's the peak year? Is it like 98? I don't know why I always think of 98 as when I think of the 90s Warped Tours as like the one.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Or like 98's with all the fat bands and all that. All right. Now here is what I feel like is their best song. It's on End Is Forever. They have the names of high school in their song. This is Fast Times at Dropout High. 99 had Limp Bizkit and Eminem. Well, hey, and Lyman always talked about it. He broke a lot of bands on that tour. You know, he likes to point to, I think, Paramore, no doubt, more so, but he had Sublime on the tour, as you said, Eminem, a lot of hip hop. I want to say I saw Body Count on the Warped Tour, even in my era. Saw Juliet and the Licks, Juliette Lewis and the Licks. That was interesting. We snuck backstage, and it's the one guy with the pass kept passing it, and then we kept getting kicked out. Yeah, 2000 is the only time Green Day ever played it. The Living End, which I heard of first on a Warped Tour comp. And much more in the genre, but like I'll always take pride in. I saw Avenged Sevenfold when they had nobody watching them at a Warped Tour, and I got a little sampler from them way before they blew up. I saw Plain White T's at the Warped Tour before anyone knew what Hey There Delilah was.
Just nostalgia and I. You were sure to have a best. For you it was just another Sunday in a small Indiana town. I went by the place.
Now, I know I said I don't like the follow-up album to So Long Astoria, but there's like a sequel to this song called Secret Handshake. Pretty good song on its own. Not very fun as an Atari song, but it's the follow-up lyrically to this song. Now, I like something corporate. I really do. I mean, I'm all about a band that can play with a piano on stage at the Warped Tour. I think that's kind of cool. And I'm looking forward to their little reunion. I'm looking forward to seeing it in person. I'm way out here in the desert of New Mexico, archivist.
And so does the fire that burn it to the ground. You can't take away all of my rights to see the day. You can't take away my love for the day. There's that time you took me aside and said I was not your only son. Childhood is so fucked up. I never had.
Song works pretty well with just him on guitar. Yeah, I'm gonna be there for sure. Can't wait till those dates open up so I can book a spot. Would have liked to do it this weekend and have Smelly be my tour guide. I think that'd be pretty awesome.
Any closer friends like the ones I had when I was young, alone again. Just you and I. Nostalgia wave goodbye. I think it's time for me to go.
I think I'll end it there because the musical part won't make sense right now. Thanks a lot.
Is that everything? No, I haven't got to deep dive into that yet. I've just seen the posts.
Let me start this from the day we met.
Chris has many songs about his daughter, which is an underrated part of their catalog. Which, you know, not everyone was a punk rock dad in that time frame, and the dynamics of that relationship are explored and evolve throughout their music.
I was scared but still happy at the same time. Never really asked to be a superficial family. In the end, it was the only thing we could be. I'm sorry, I wasn't there for you. What did you expect from me to? You know that I would have done anything for you.
Yeah, and for all of us that weren't really like there yet on our punk rock, I think the Ataris represented a bit of a gateway in that, like, they were underground enough, but you could still have very easy access to their albums. Their stuff really sounded pretty similar to the radio-friendly stuff that was introducing kids into punk, but they just seemed so much cooler than those bands. Like, they were on the record label with the Vandals, and they were featured in these movies with the Vandals, and they were touring with these cooler bands. And it was a trip whenever they exploded. They were the band that everyone in my friend group could kind of agree on. They were kind of our pop band, I would say, in that way. You know, 'cause you got metal guys, you got more hardcore punk guys, you guys into all kinds of stuff. Guys that really were just into the popular stuff, and the Ataris were a nice thing that we all shared.
Thanks a lot for sticking around. We'll see you real soon. Something like that.
So this was, we'll close it out there with the music there. That was on September 10th, 2001. They would spend most of that next year recording the album. They actually got off the road for a full year. That was the advantage of having that Columbia money to record So Long Astoria. At a later time, we'll do a full-scale deep dive into So Long Astoria. I never did. I'm aware of the show, but I've never dove into it. Got all the actors that I would like a few years later. All right. I'm going to have to cut the stream off there. I plan on going 2 hours. I went 2 hours and 38 minutes. This is kind of fun. Hang out, kind of informal. Just doing our thing, reacting to videos from around the internet. I think maybe every couple of weeks we'll do one of these on a Saturday. I got to check that out. I want to do a whole video on like punk, like there's the punk episode of that 70s show. There's a lot of punk episodes of like 90s shows. James Franco trying to become a punk. That's great. I need that. Yeah, I need to curate a list of all these, especially in the 90s. There was a lot of punk themed episodes, as you were saying. Even back, you could go back in the 70s, and there's like the episode of Chips or whatever. That's the all those police procedurals in that day had like a punk episode as well. See, I always think of these video ideas, and then I don't always go back and watch these streams. That's one that would be unique. I'm sure nobody's ever done a video like that, and that would be that'd be one we could actually do on like a Twitch stream and then cut it down for a video. So we'll get that planned out. Like I said, guys, I got to get out of here. I may or may not be coloring Easter eggs with very little people here in a little bit. So if you're celebrating anything, I know there's several holidays kind of peaking right now. Definitely have a good one. Stay safe, everyone. Unless the world doesn't fall apart, I will see you Tuesday night. Plenty of content coming up because I got a lot of stuff in the can right now that I just got to do a lot.